All right, we gave people 5 minutes for a carryover delay. So real quick first before we start, right? Aviation is pretty central to all of us. So let's start with something near and dear, safety. So if you're not familiar with the building, because I am not, I've not been in this conference room before. If we do have to leave for a reason, I have had to leave with a group for an actual issue. Go out the door and take a right. And the near stairwells, you'll see the exit signs on the left and right. So if we have to go, my ask is look after your coworkers, since not all of us may know each other, and all of you can look out for me, make sure I got it, since I don't have anybody here. So real quick introductions and then some asks in terms of kind of how the session goes. Has anybody ever gone to a continuous improvement training session event, been involved before? No. Yes, okay. Okay, so great. Then we get to start without any preconceived notions. So awesome. So let's do introductions, but I want to do a little bit different because my hope for this session is, from my view, I'm here to serve and bless you and spend time. So while there's a typical agenda and outline, kind of a flow through that I'll go through, really what I want to do is change it based on what are the needs, what are you saying, what are you struggling with, what do you want to do? So kind of just in general, do we have any folks that are what I would consider, right, the senior leaders of a company, right, directors and above? Okay, so for everybody else, you get to point at them. This is mostly your responsibility, right? Because a lot of what we're going to talk about is how do you, right, bring this in? How does it be successful as a company? And what is that role? One of the big tenets that I've always operated on is we don't skip levels. And the key reason for that, right, is if you think of the direction of a company, right, culture eats strategy. So what is the culture that you're setting? How is this part of how you work? Where typically when you, right, see continuous improvement, you might hear we do lean, we do workshops, we do Kaizens, and it's problem specific. We go grab a tool and we just solve that problem. Okay, well, we're done with that. So we're done with CI, right? We're done with lean. We don't need to do anymore. And in reality, right, I'm much more focused on, yes, there are tools, and we're going to talk about one later because I want you to feel like you have a way to apply what we're going to talk about today. But it's very much around the, yeah, but what are the principles? What are we trying to do? How do we think differently, right? As leaders, majority of what we're faced with is we need to make a decision. We need to move in the right direction. We're trying to make positive change, right? So whether it's, hey, we know what the solution is, let's build a good project plan. We don't know what the solution is. We're not sure what the right way, but we can see the problem in front of us or the opportunity we need to somehow take advantage of. We got to pick a good path. And so how do we think about doing that the right way? So for those that are in those senior leader roles, right, that's where I always start first with companies is the, how do we focus on the direction that you set? Because as leaders, right, we really control the systems of a company, right? All of the groupings of the processes and the groupings of the tasks. So as leader, you have a lot of control, right? And a lot of influence under direction of those systems that drive a lot of volume of change, right, to the task level that are done by the different groups. And so that's where we're going to focus on. So big ask, participate. Please don't make this a lecture. A lot of my questions are not rhetorical. I'll say if it's rhetorical. So please participate. And a key reason for that is if this is a lecture, you're only going to go away remembering about 9% of what we covered. If we had some audio video, it goes up to about 20, but participation moves that up to about 50%. Applying it moves it to 75%. If you get to where you're starting to teach and develop and coach your own people and leaders, now you're starting to retain, right, and have that competency going up to 90%. So please participate, because I don't know about you, but if I had to spend 3 hours and I only walked away feeling like I took away 9% of what was covered, probably wouldn't feel like the best use of time. Okay, so participate, be involved. If you're a fellow introvert, I hear you. But participate, even if it's processing through, writing some things down, trying to come up with, I want to save some time and flexibility in our 3 hours for you to stop and go, wait, can you kind of go back? What did you mean by that? Interrupt, wave at me. We'll take a break in the middle so you can grab some more coffee, water, and then we'll keep going. Good? Okay. So real quick for introductions, and then I want to get some stuff from you. So Jeff Marth, I work for Saltchuk Aviation. I'm the Senior Director of Continuous Improvement. So the three groups that I lead are our continuous improvement, our business intelligence, so how we take data and information and make it useful to drive good decisions, know truth, and then our project management and our strategy execution. So what are the major efforts that we're trying to do as a company based on the direction we know we need to go? How do we make good decisions? How do we prioritize? How do we know that we get it done and actually have a plan towards that? So that's my big focus in the company. So what I'd love to hear from you before I go any more in, what do you hope to get out today? Be selfish.
No expectations.
No expectations, yeah. That's okay.
We were at InfoShare in Dallas, and the big push from the safety folks were getting to that next level of getting your people to do the best job that they can.
Okay.
And that's why we saw continuous improvement on your agenda. I
Okay.
encourage our folks to attend. We find that our safety reporting and ASAP and all that good stuff, and we get that back to the folks. That only gets us so far. We really need our people out on the line working to set an excellent standard.
Yep.
When we set the standard, we need them to achieve it.
And you look at us at Grand Aviation, we've kind of exploded in growth over the past several years, but we're still trying to catch up to that growth a little bit with our processes. Continuous improvement. It's something that hopefully we can use to help fix that situation.
Maturity of right practices and growth don't always stay aligned. Yeah.
We have a lot of like legacy ways that we used to do things that fit for the small organization, but now we're adding people and adding complexities and adding to everything and trying to figure out better ways to do it, more efficient ways to do it.
Yeah.
Word of mouth isn't working as well anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. Worked great when everybody was the 20-year people who'd always been there, right? Because yeah.
Everybody can stand in a circle. Now you've got multiple different facilities and trying to disseminate information is difficult. My thought is adding another tool to the bag, essentially, with regards to being able to communicate to my team and everybody else.
I'm gonna sound a little hypocritical, right? 90% of how we'll talk won't be tool-based. I am gonna give you something here at the end and we're gonna walk through it together. Okay, how do I use this as a way of thinking through what the problem is? And it feels very, okay, well, isn't this something I would go give to my teams? But we'll talk about why it's a very useful tool for you to use. So it's the application of what we'll talk about. What else? Be selfish. What do you personally?
I think our own personal growth, right?
Okay.
Some of these things, I'm assuming some of the things that we're gonna learn from you is gonna allow us to see things in different light, which would be our own growth.
Improving leadership skills and, all this, it's all part of our jobs. We need to be improving at all times.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Nope.
I'm looking in the mirror.
I'd like to discover more about the difference, or not the difference, but there's good data markers that are valuable, and then we waste, I say we, the collective we, industry-wide, I think, waste a lot of time chasing data that's not actually going to give us
Okay,
the real information that we need.
so you're going the wrong direction.
Yeah,
Okay.
just the indicators of, am I chasing the wrong set of data? Do I need to back up before I get too far down that track?
So are you trying to get help for how do I know I'm going the right way?
Yeah.
Is that,
Sure.
it's okay, I don't want to put words in your mouth. You
No,
tell
it's
me if
fine.
that's.
Yeah, because I mean, I can get into our reporting system and our other systems that give us information, and I can analyze it any which sort of way. But how do I, really know that, okay, this is what, when I go into the executive leadership and say, this is what I'm getting, these are the indications I'm getting. And they go, that's not really what we want.
You mentioned systems and I see culture. I work nights in maintenance control. I don't see anybody of these people during the day. But I talk to a lot of customers. And I see a lot of culture and I want the words to describe what I'm seeing that how I can relay that to my boss who's not here. But not my direct, I want the words to describe what I see see some problems.
So if something's not going right, you want to be able to convey it in a way the person recognizes, yeah, that's not good, right?
Right, I want the culture part, not really systems. We have good systems.
Yeah, I don't even know who said it, and it's probably been butchered or twisted over the years, right? But problem defined is half solved, right? Do we know the direction we need to be going? Do we agree that this is something we need to do it about? Yeah. Yeah, and we spend a lot of time on that. Right, if you think of problems that come up in a company, right? Typically, folks will start going way deep into hey, I gotta be able to propose all the way into the detail of the solution, right? Versus bring it back to the beginning, and do we know enough about the problem to even discuss it yet? Do we actually have it defined well enough that we really are setting a correct direction? How do we not waste, right? And we're gonna talk about the waste, different elements of that, but how do we not waste effort, right, before we have agreement of where we should go? And is this even the most important, right? Because we all also have blinders in our own companies. We can only see what we see, right? So at some point, we have to bring it back and go, wait a minute, which is the thing we should be focusing on? Because we all have limited resources, right? We don't have unlimited people or money. Okay, any other last ones?
But my question is, what wins have you guys found with your continuous improvement program?
Say that again.
What wins have you guys found by implementing your continuous improvement program?
So we're still early, right? Culture change doesn't come quick. And a lot of our focus has been on the senior leadership, especially in the operational areas. How do we equip them, right, for driving the right decisions, having the right conversations with their team? If any of you have a weekly or daily, right, type of operational discussion, we put a lot of focus into how should those conversations be taking place from the senior leaders, right, in terms of how they should be setting expectations. What are the right things? What should we look at? Because right, that has the ripple effect of, okay, we're looking at the right things. People know what they need to know to make the next decisions, right, and do the right actions. We'll talk about as part of the conversation, right, the today work, tomorrow work, day after tomorrow work, right? So as a senior leader, where do we focus, right? How do we make sure that your time is really emphasized on the day after tomorrow, right? What are the strategic things and the directions that you want your team to be looking at in terms of, okay, I need to be doing these actions, thinking about, right, the next week or two, that should then also be driving the correct actions for today. So focusing on the senior leadership, back to that's where we've put a lot of time, and it's made a big change to the conversations that we have. So we're looking at things at a weekly basis that drive us in the right direction, at a daily basis that help get the people what they need to make the correct operational schedules, right? You put a schedule out, but you need to make changes for different reasons. How do you minimize those, right? Changes have a cost. If it's not $1, there could be an impact, right? You might shortchange yourself on a pilot, right? So you think of all those ripple effects, but you go back to, but wait a minute, how are we operating to reduce the variability in our business, right? You can't predict weather, but you can prepare for it, right? You can't predict a maintenance event, but you make changes to your maintenance program. So how do you get back to those systems, and how do you have those leaders thinking the right ways so that it reduces the problems further down the road? So we're getting some good decision-making going by looking at how do we get the waste out? I think what you've made over here, we've added, and that's a typical normal, right? As opposed to going, well, wait a minute, where's the waste in the process we can get out? It's a very normal thing of, okay, well, we got to add that. Okay, well, we got to add that. Okay, we got to add that, right? So how do you not over complicate things when we're doing? It's an easy thing to do, right? To just, well, we'll add that step, something went wrong, we'll add a step in. So mistake proof versus inspection. All right, any last ones? Okay, I'm gonna make an effort not to write all over my hands today with the pens. Spelling amnesty, please. There is no spell check on the pens.
Someday.
Someday, unless you get those really fancy whiteboards that have the technology when you go up on it. There are some amazing ones out there. All right, so don't skip levels, right? Let's talk a little today, tomorrow, day after tomorrow, because I want you to kind of be thinking about it as we go through. So you think about the tasks of today, right? What are the things that we need to do? You're operational, right? The I need to do it, there tends to be, right, or the ideal is less gray, right? Because your things of today should have been set, should be known, should be a fixed process, right? You think about the tomorrow stuff, and not so literal, but right, the tomorrow may be out a week or two. What are the things that you're trying to prepare for, right? How do you think ahead on those things? And then the day after tomorrow, right? Those programs of changes that you own, and where does that? So as you think of your own time, where do you spend most of your time? What does your day look like? Where do you break out your day for me? What are the things that you do as a leader on a given day?
Meetings,
Meetings.
too many.
How much time do you spend on meetings? In a normal day?
About 3 hours.
30%,
3 hours?
yeah,
Let's do an hours.
3 hours.
Okay,
Yeah, that's a good number.
okay, others. Anybody do more? An hour? Okay. It's okay, be honest. Anybody have more? Usually there's somebody that doesn't want to say that. All right. 3 hours. What else?
Emails,
Yeah.
thousands.
Always a toss up whether email or meeting is gonna come up first. Okay.
Lots of phone calls.
Well, how long do you spend on emails?
That's like all they do.
Colors. At least 2 hours.
Well, there's two elements for emails. There's triaging the email and then there's responding to the email. So triage is usually 15 minutes a day going through we get about 250 emails that come through our accounts a day. And then
No, double that.
Michelle.
That sounds like Sunday.
I have a counter that counts them.
That
and
sounds
that's
like
what
Sunday.
goes through.
That sounds like summer.
He puts some in the
I don't get
folders and doesn't
safeties.
see 'em.
Okay,
Okay,
so
so total time.
triage
All
the email
you're
and then
working on.
responding to the email. Responding to the email can be dependent on the content of the email, can be anywhere from, like she said, yeah, it could be 15 minutes to 3 hours.
Total time. Give me a
Like
chunk.
a whole day responding to one email from one person.
4 to 6 hours on email.
Okay, 4 to 6. I think you said 3. Who else? You said 1.
Yeah, when you're not in a meeting.
When you're not in the meeting.
Yeah, phone calls.
Okay.
If you took the whole day, because, you know, we all have our phones, so I'm sure at night, even when we're trying to wind down, we're scrolling through it. So,
Oh, yeah, this may not add up to 10 when we're done. Don't have
yeah, I mean,
any false understanding.
you added everything up. I would say you could concentrate on emails at least 5 hours a day on an average through the week. If you averaged it all up, and I'm talking 7 days.
Yeah.
And, you know,
Okay. So I heard some ranges in here. Let's go kind of in the middle there and just put some here a little above, some below.
I put
Let's just
15 minutes.
go for
I don't.
What else?
You're not reading yours.
it. Safe space.
Advertising so many meetings.
just mark
This
that.
session cannot result in any terminations. All right.
When somebody sends you an email and then gets up from their desk to come say, did you get my email? Oh my God.
We're not gonna go there.
I hate.
That's a waste of travel. We'll talk about that later. Okay, what else? What else is in your day?
Well, now it's the texting.
And Teams.
So what's phone? Calls, texts.
Meeting.
That's 2-3 hours a day.
Okay, or 2 to 3.
Doesn't it?
For me, it's at least 2 hours, average.
Okay,
Just so we're clear, we're grouping phone calls and texts.
yeah, we'll just say
together.
phone.
Not.
So when you're texting, you're actually on the call.
3 hours and then after hours, is another 2.5 to 3 hours, I guess.
Okay. I heard some 2, I heard some 3 to 4. 6, yeah, some probably do have, so let's just look them. So, already felt. All right, let's do in the middle. So let's just look at this stuff, right? So 10-hour day, does that feel normal?
I have some trainings usually in there throughout the day, either giving training or receiving training. I would argue we're receiving training right now. And meetings, I would break down to status meetings of what's going on versus planning meetings, which is what we're doing in the future.
So let's just keep high level, right? Chunks of time, right? So right now we're at a 10-hour day. For the high level buckets of work. That resonate? I feel like, yeah. Yeah,
And then you gotta break out the in-person communication, the one-on-ones.
it has you stopping and starting, right?
Yeah.
You come over, yep. Have any of you heard about task switching? So the normal person, and it's actually not a lot of variation. Everybody likes to think, well, I'm different, I can do it better, or I don't have the impact, right? But the normal person's brain takes 15 minutes. Your brain's like a car, right, where it needs to spin up to speed. So your brain takes about 15 minutes for it to start switching chemical reactions, process changes, electrical flow. About 15 minutes for your brain to swap fully over and get fully back up to speed on a new task. So if you're jumping back and forth, if you're not right disciplined in the way you do email, you got a whole bunch open and then you're jumping over here and then you take a phone call and then somebody comes by, right? Think of what that does to your productivity and your impact. So hold on to that. That is a rhetorical one. So I want you to do something for me because I want you to kind of understand, right, the impact of continuous improvement and what waste has on. So I want you to think about, we're gonna do a positive part. So I want you to think about something, a hobby, something you enjoy that you do outside of work. Don't tell me what it is, but tell me, right, the goodness, the positive in it. Tell me how it makes you feel. Positive or negative. Describe it.
Free,
Free.
quiet,
Sorry.
quiet.
Quiet.
Silence around.
Not distracted by other things.
So focus.
Engaged.
Energized,
I missed the last one.
energized.
Energized. Thank you.
Fresh.
What else?
Time goes by really fast.
Happy.
Looking for the right word, but on the negative side, I would say, like, sad at the thought of it ending.
So short-lived. Sure. Is that a good way of?
I call it living in the fantasy world versus living in the real world.
Okay. Okay.
That's called dread.
Dread. That is the word. So dread of ending. What else?
Guilty,
Say more.
because there's so much at work sometimes that you get sucked into the work, and then when you're doing the thing you like to do, you're still enjoying it, but at the same time, you're like, I could be doing XYZ, or, oh, I have to, if I could just spend a couple hours this weekend on the computer, then I could go in and on Monday be that much further ahead on whatever project it is.
Okay. What else? How do you describe it? Thing you like to do? You choose to do might be a good way.
Accomplish. Intent. Fulfill.
No one's depending on me.
Oh, that's a fantasy.
No one has to pay.
24 hours a day.
How do you, give it to me in 1 or 2 words? No one is depending on me.
Individual.
Like free of your work responsibilities? He asked for it, I gave it.
No, I get what he's trying to say though, I mean, because
It's like, you just get my
sometimes you feel like you're being pulled in so many directions and stuff, and those directions are dependent on you actually moving that direction. But when
Okay.
you're off doing something like this, you're just like.
You're like untethered or
Yeah.
unchained.
So burden free? Is that?
Yeah,
Okay.
burden free.
No longer up there.
Really bad.
Okay, that's a good list. Positive?
Yes.
Yeah.
Positive? Content? Quiet, positive?
Okay.
Happy, positive? Engaged?
Yes.
Accomplished?
Yep.
Focused?
Yep.
Absolutely.
Energized?
Yes.
Fast time?
No.
Goes too fast?
The
Perception?
weekend's over.
Guilty? Yeah.
Negative.
Dread of ending? Refreshed?
Good.
Burden free?
Yes.
Okay. Know where I'm going, don't say anything. Don't give it up. Usually I have to ask if some, a lot of folks have said they've been in sessions before. But you didn't want to. All right. Now I want you to think about work. Describe work.
Disaster.
Stop it. Stressful.
Come on. Teamwork.
Oh, boy.
Dumpster fire.
I missed a couple. Okay, teamwork.
Hot garbage and some sort
It was said too many times. Dumpster fire.
Words that don't.
Meaningful.
That are
Meaningful.
professionally correct and proper.
Yeah.
Dan, you don't get to talk to.
I heard another.
Accomplished.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can be.
Productive.
Fulfilling.
See how my teamwork made the whole list go positive? You guys see that?
That's all you.
That small seed
Keep going.
All like
has
you.
sprouted into.
Describe how work makes you feel, just like you're
It's exciting for me.
exciting. Okay, hold on, I
I
heard
never
heard one
really
after
been-
exciting.
That was negative.
No,
Not
it's-
straight.
What was the one after exciting? I heard another one. Sorry,
Hectic.
hectic?
I also said productive, but that's.
Pressure.
Well, you tell me.
Pressure.
I heard over here accomplished productive. Is it, are you thinking the same or you think it's different? We can write both.
I think it's two different things.
Okay, we'll write both.
That's productive. When that happens, it feels really good.
Okay, productive. What else?
Remember what that was?
Stressful.
What was
Stressful.
stressful?
She said never ending, which I agree with.
Challenging, okay.
Motivated.
I heard another one over here.
Frustrating.
Frustrating.
Difficult.
Difficult.
overwhelming.
Well,
It can also be fun.
Yeah.
That's fine.
fine. That's fine.
We need some more positive ones, Dan.
No. Be real.
Fatiguing.
Yeah.
You know, the big
Pilot's
day.
gotta say that.
I am not going there.
I feel fatigued this week and I'm not a pilot.
Okay, you're slow neck. Let's go with this. It's a good list. So positive, negative, disaster.
Mostly a negative.
Who likes disasters? Reality, not rhetorical. Who likes disasters?
I do not.
Well, sometimes
You-
there's an
People thrive on
opportunity.
it.
You have people that do.
I think it depends on the disaster, because sometimes disasters can breed growth.
They
A
can, the way
disaster
you
can
respond,
occur.
yeah.
Yeah. I think
But you have people who like them and not in a good way.
No.
Okay,
Well, yeah, I think.
So we'll
You know,
talk
operation
into
makes you-
that.
Makes you focus better. That's how I feel about it. So.
So we,
Working in a disaster.
It is mostly negative, but there is some positive.
yeah,
that is-
so you can have goodness and growth, right, out of, you can learn how to do different, right? Plan, do, check
You can
out.
also have toxicity, like you were saying, because there's, some people live for the disaster and create disasters in order.
Your
to-
firefighters, right?
Yeah.
So we're gonna talk about that, how it relates to some of this as we get in more to that today, tomorrow, day after tomorrow, right? Because the things you do today, right, the disasters that somebody needs to do, you have people who like it and from a change perspective are gonna struggle with working different because they're gonna lose that immediate feedback and that immediate positive reaction that they have grown to like by not having these in your business, right? So as your business matures, right, as you grow, right, and you mature the way you work, you get more predictability, right? You build the waste out, you change your systems. Those start to go down and you will see folks really struggle with that because they won't have that immediacy of feedback that they're used to having in their day-to-day business that really helps them feel like they're accomplished. So as leaders, we have to find ways to help those folks still understand how they are accomplished to contribute to the organization. These are your people who you don't know until down the road, right? Are also working 10 hours on Saturday and half of their Sunday and coming in early every day and staying late every day because they feel like that is the best way to contribute to the business. So think about that, right? In terms from a leadership perspective, how do you help those people who are very successful in the business with where the business was still be successful and learn how they contribute later? So teamwork, positive or negative? Positive.
Well,
I'm with you, Julie.
thank you.
So full.
Unless it's not the right team, I mean,
Okay,
you know.
we'll say both.
Yeah.
Accomplished,
That's, I would say it's positive.
meaningful,
Positive.
fulfilling,
Positive.
dumpster fire,
Negative.
That's negative, yeah.
exciting,
Positive.
productive,
Positive.
overwhelmed,
Negative.
fatigue. I can't even read my own. Satisfying,
Positive.
fun,
Positive.
motivating.
Could be a negative, but whatever.
Which
People
one?
are having too much fun. They're not paying attention to what needs to be done, Michelle.
Oh, we're moving on. Motivating,
That's positive. Fun.
difficult.
I would give that.
That's second.
Oh, yeah, difficult work.
Yep.
That's employed.
Frustrating.
You know, I would even say that's a both because, you know, although things can be frustrating, that you need it for your times because that's leads
Adversity.
you in the positive, you know, in a direction.
You can grow a lot getting out of your comfort zone, right? Yeah, so I agree. Challenging,
Also, that one's distinctly positive, yeah. Just positive.
Oh, it's got both. You gotta go with both. If it's too challenging,
Negative,
people get
too.
burned out.
Depends on the person. Some people don't like.
That's true, but
I would say challenging is both and difficult is negative.
I could say.
That's just
I don't have a thesaurus to say they're the same or not.
No,
Okay, so we got perspectives different, so
Yeah.
that's okay. Hectic.
Is it productively hectic? It's not productively hectic.
Is there such thing as productively hectic? What's the outcome of rushing?
Yeah. and-
Usually
That's
usually
like-
dumpster fires. Usually it's a dumpster fire.
Between rushing it and
Or
doing things
disaster.
quickly.
If you're rushing, is your process effective for what you're trying to accomplish?
No.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, dumpster fire, injuries, hurt, trip, fall, slip, hand, roll over, yeah. Yeah, stress.
Causes health issues, so I'd say.
Yeah, I would say it's
You're taking my next thing.
gone to stress level, then it's.
So can you have good stress though? I mean, it's kind of the same thing as frustrated or difficult, is it expands your comfort zone. You can't expand your comfort zone.
level of stress.
So with all that being said, you know, when you go and you work out, you're throwing out iron and stuff like that, right? Like you're experiencing fatigue, it's developing, you're burning out those muscles in order to come
Yep.
back and grow and be stronger for it, you know, so. I remember reading a book, it was called Anti-Fragile, and you know, experiencing fatigue and stress. They're important things to experience because then they help to prepare you and they help you grow and be able to handle more difficult situations that may come your way. Difficult or challenging situations, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So some of these where we mark both, right? If you're making a change to your business in a positive way, are people gonna experience some of these?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So that's not necessarily a negative thing, right? That folks are gonna be challenged, that there might be some difficulty that comes with it, right? But there's some growth that goes. Key thing there, right, is how are you making the change? How's it happening, right? So where you're choosing, right, you're gonna go, hey, I wanna do an Ironman, right? There's a lot of fatigue that will come with that, right? There's a lot of challenge, there's a lot of, right, difficulty. But, right, there's a choice and there's probably a pattern too, and there's a process and there's intentionality, right? There's a change plan, right? You're working through change in the right way to get to that desired result, right? So think of it in terms of how is the change happening?
Yeah.
So,
Planned or not, I mean, if it's planned, then you're prepared for it. Yeah. It's when the unplanned happens.
even in unplanned, right, the way the change occurs can have a very different impact, right? On how you and your own people respond. So let me ask you, how do you think your bodies responded as we were talking through some of these that have red? What do you think I saw visually?
Tension.
Yeah. Some of you who'd been kind of moving a little, you stopped moving. Some of you, your shoulders did this. So some of you probably right now need to do a little, get the tongue off the roof of your mouth, calm down a little, relax.
I think
Maybe tip your head up a little.
the big difference between this list and the first list is the addition of large numbers of people with varying work styles, personality traits. Because,
Are there
Yeah.
different personality states and styles and hobbies?
but I think that list was specific to things that you as a person enjoy doing, which means you're bringing with you people that are similar minded, or you're going alone. Whereas this list, you're just kind of dumped in with all kinds of other people that cause lots of different, you have to stop and take a deep breath and go, okay, how can I explain this another way to convey what I'm trying to say? Or, you know, why can't we all just be adults and get along?
So when you think of your hobby, right? Sorry, it's blocking for some of you. Is there anybody getting paid to do what you enjoy outside of work?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guarantee it. I guarantee you there's somebody, right, that is. Now, I'm not saying to go jump your career and some of you are going, what are you doing, Jeff? So, yes, right? So what's the difference? So I'll tell you, there are like and different minded mixes, right, in your hobby and your work, right? Do we want like-minded in our work environment?
No.
No,
Not
we
necessarily.
we actually don't, right? Statistically, philosophically, right? We can go back and we won't spend that, we only got till noon. But I can tell you that the difference in the companies who actually have different thinking people benefit far greater and actually have higher return on the objective measures of a company. right? The revenue, EBIT, engagement, right? Pieces, retention. So different personalities together actually have a far greater benefit to a company. Objectively, those are the companies that do better. So that's okay, but what's the difference? What is the difference here in these lists?
We get paid to deal with that negative stuff.
I think the biggest difference is that we choose, when you partake in a hobby or say a group of hobbies, you choose to actively engage in those things. Whatever you like, as opposed to your job, which isn't perhaps necessarily forced on you, but if you want to maintain employment, you have to put forth at least X amount of work units in order to maintain your job and and the stability that your job affords to help you continue paying for your hobbies.
Yep. So the things you choose to do outright, you chose, right? That was something that looked fun or you thought you'd enjoy to do, so you headed down that path. Is there absolutely anybody who said, I hate aviation, I'm gonna go get a job there? No, do you think there's anybody in the medical field? I hate dealing with patients, I don't like blood, I hate medicine, I want nothing, I'm gonna go work at a hospital.
I've been to doctors that.
They kind of convey, right? Yeah, there are definitely some who need to pick a different field. But I bet we've probably had folks in our own career, right, in aviation, who this is now, we're gonna operate today, right, under the assumption that 99.9% of your employees, right, our coworkers come into work wanting to do good, right? You ain't gonna have a lot of folks in your career, you cross them, right, who come in, I'm gonna mess things up today, right? Not that people don't make mistakes, right? I guarantee you I have made mistakes. I can tell you some horror stories, you probably can too. Right? How do we deal with it? But people don't, right, say, I hate aviation, I'm gonna go get a job there, right? So when you think of it between the hobby and that, but to your point, right, that's exactly on. But we have a need here, right? Folks actually are reliant on this work being successful, right? And the support that we bring as leaders. So how does that make you feel when you know, right, just like you feel it, and right, the stress started to come up? What's the physical impact? So not rhetorical, what's the physical impact of stress? What does it do to you?
It ages you.
It ages you, yeah.
There's countless health implications.
Like what?
You know, blood pressure,
Yep,
heart issues.
yep,
You know,
More indirect causes, you start to eat out more, which means you tend to put on, you develop just overall health problems.
yep,
you know,
Psychological problems that people focus in on their bad emotions, anger and such, and take it out on their families
Yep.
and such.
or they keep it inside and they don't have an outlet for it.
Yeah.
You know, so there's.
yep. Anybody have an employee or had an employee that you really wanted to coach them, you saw opportunity, but they couldn't take feedback?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's probably a stress reaction from far before you.
Yeah.
If they're newer in their career and they're having it, that's probably a stress reaction to something in their childhood or their family. Now, there's other things, right, that come into that, but the way people react tends to be because of something they experienced before. So yeah, you think of stress, right? And so let's go back, right? The day after tomorrow, what do we as leaders have control over in terms of how the business works, right? The systems, right? There aren't a lot of systems of things, right? You've got your HR systems, your IT literal systems, right? But your grouping of operational things that you do, the way we set decisions as a company, the way we build out, right, philosophically, our flight schedule, our strategy plan for our aircraft, our maintenance, right? All of those systems of how the business functions, that the leadership, right, has the ability to influence, make decisions, control. And those have the domino effect, right? Those feed into the tomorrow processes, the today processes, which drive that, right? So as leaders, is it a ethical or is it a business decision to fix this? Oh, yeah. Yeah, right. So that was the moment that was really kind of heart-wrenching, but I got a responsibility here moment in my career for continuous improvement, how it hits, what it does, right? Seeing the frustration and the stress. One time I was working with a maintenance and engineering group for a couple of years, and the question that got the best response from folks in terms of what are the things we need to tackle, what frustrates you, what is the task card that when you get assigned that task card for the aircraft, your coworkers need to roll your eye because you do not want to have to do that one. What is it about that? What are the things that just tick you off that you have to deal with or really made you mad last week in terms of how it was done? That's the emotional reaction, right? Sorry.
No,
Those are the red
sorry.
words that are coming out because there's something there, right? So in terms of having people engaged to identify your problems, your employees already know where they are, right? It's just taking the time to actually engage with them to set a culture for it. And so we'll keep talking about that aspect of, okay, but how do we do that? How do we start? Where do we start? And that comes back to, right, what I said at the beginning of don't skip levels. Invest on yourselves first. Please don't. Where I have seen companies, there's always an end of life. Really fail at continuous improvement is I'm going to take that problem sheet and I'm going to go make a problem board and I'm going to have all my frontline people do it. That doesn't sustain. It might last for a few years, and even at larger companies, right, like Boeing, who has some large pockets of lean. I've had a lot of time spending with them. It worked well for about 5-6 years, and then fizzled as a leadership change. And then it works 5-6 years in a big, and then fizzled as a leadership change. Right, so the leadership really sets culture eats strategy for lunch. So the culture of how you think through, how do we solve problems? How do we engage our employees? How do I, right, set expectations for my leaders? Because you all have the positive reaction, right, of what I wanted from what does this do to you physically? So if you're a bean counter, you got somebody who's highly over logical and you're trying to talk to them about CI, fine, go that path, help them understand, right? I guarantee you this has an impact on your premiums. This is impacting the medical costs that you pay as a company into things, because insurance always gets their money back, right? Doesn't matter what it is. You can file claims, you can have medical, they always get their money back in some way. Productivity, absolutely, right? Does this impact? There's a reason companies do engagement surveys, right? And there's a reason that there are companies out there that support in terms of how do you actually do something with it? Because objectively, the data shows, right? When you can remove those, right, engagement by making change the right way, involving the right people, changing the systems, reducing the frustration at work, that has a huge impact on your employees, right? And think of what that does for your retention, not having to go back and backfill roles, not losing people to another company, people looking at I'm not even gonna bother to look for another job or watch the job boards because I enjoy what I do here so much, right? Wouldn't that be great if that was the attitude of the work group? Okay, you guys good? Keep going a little bit and then break, or do you want break now?
I'm just gonna grab coffee.
Okay, jump up and grab coffee and snacks all three. We don't need to break for that. All right, so let's talk about what do you look for, right? So even if you can see where people are frustrated and you can see that there's problems happening in the business. Can you all see okay when it's here? Is that good? Okay.
Maintenance.
Not just Phil, it's right on the floor while you put it.
The pen cap that came out of the little,
There you go.
thank you. Yes, I don't want to trip. No on the job injuries. By the way, if anybody needs a knee scooter, I got one tomorrow.
Tim Wood.
What's that?
Oh, I was saying it out.
Oh, okay. All right, so let's talk about waste, right? So I'm gonna take my example, right? Talking to technicians, what are the things that frustrate you, right? What I'm really looking for, but I don't need them to actually know what they are. But I wanted to start to get that group to recognize, right, is there's some waste there. So one of the task cards that the technicians brought in was they didn't like it because of the way it made them move around the aircraft. So you got senior employees who know, well, I got to do this task card. We do it every 3 days on most of our aircraft. But the way it's written has me walking to here and then back here and then back over here and then back in the cockpit and back over here, right? And just the frustration of, they know that they sit there and to make it easier on themselves, they go, okay, well, I'm actually gonna do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. They're writing it on for themselves because that's the order that they can do what they need to do, right? Accomplish what's supposed to be, but not bounce all over the place. And their frustration was newer technicians who have not done it or don't do it very often. Now they got to teach them every single time. And now every technician is doing it different. So you're working with a different technician. They go in one order, another one goes in another order. And it's just frustrating in terms of where do you set your parts out? What do you need to go to first? So think of what that does, right? In terms of the day-to-day work and the getting things done, right? From a leadership level, how do you resource plan around that? When you have it take 4 hours here and 2 hours here, right? How do you plan for what you can get done in a day? How do you think ahead to what you need as a business and understand the costs? Because that has an effect, right? That all rolls up when you think about that across the company and all the different groups. If you've got more than one person, you might have more than one way of doing it. It's not that there's no process, it's that there's a process for every single person in it, right? Lack of definition means everybody has their own definition. So those come from waste. So I'm gonna give you, and we're gonna walk through, ask questions. I wanna make sure you're really clear on. So we have 7 wastes. And if you've seen waste before and other ones, you typically will see 8. So the one that you're gonna see missing is employee engagement or employee creativity. The reason that I don't have it in the list is because what I want folks to recognize and really associate, even if they can't remember what all the 7 wastes are, you wanna get rid of waste. And it just sounds very odd where you're really trying to people just associate waste is bad, get rid of it. And you got the words employee engagement or employee creativity in there, right? So folks will typically say, well, we want to use employee creativity, right? We want to use employee engagement. So are you going to say we want to get rid of not using employee engagement? Just kind of has a weird connotation to it. So 7, 10 P WAD, if you want to easy to remember it. I'm gonna have these sent to you after. So if you're one that likes to take notes to just kind of help yourself retain, go for it. But we're gonna send these and a couple other things afterwards. So you've got some stuff you can reference and bounce off of and just kind of keep in mind. Okay, so we're gonna go with an easy one first. So defects, right? I think that's an easy one. Didn't happen right. It didn't happen right the first time. So you think of it in terms of the things that went wrong. It was supposed to have this as an output. It didn't. That could be a delay, right? A flight. It could be literally something broke, something that was put together wrong and had a negative impact. Maybe something was missed or forgotten when it was passed along, and now you got to go back and do. A good thing to understand with defects is a defect is going to drive one of the other ways, at least. I'll tell you from a impact perspective, a defect typically takes no less than 4 times as much effort to fix than the first one to do. And that's at a minimum, right? You have the time that somebody had to take to find there was a problem. You have time to figure out what the heck's going on. You have the time to figure out now what are you gonna do about it? And now you gotta actually spend the time to go fixing what it was and get things back into a correct state. So you think about the amount of time it takes to address one of those, right? It can domino really quickly in terms of a defect, right? And we can all joke about the whole, you have time to do it, you should have done it right the first time, right? But sometimes the process or a lack of process can drive people to do something that wasn't intended, which might be a defect. And the auto response from a lot of folks, especially newer leaders, is the person was wrong. When in reality, right, we need to take a step back and say, wait a minute, did we actually set the person up for success? Did we have something for them to know what they were supposed to do? Very rarely when you get down to it, was it actually a human issue on it? But that's the default to go to is, that's your fault. You should have known better.
Yeah.
Well, should they? Okay. We're gonna do 2 together, transportation and movement. If you want an easy way to do it, it's kind of an older one, movement, man, person, right? This is your people going around back and forth. This is I sent an email and then I'm gonna go walk down and say, can you read that email? Okay, right, that movement, that distance, right? The example of the technician doing that task card, they were walking over a mile to do the task card. versus getting it down to just a couple hundred feet of walking when you do it in the correct order, right? That drives time, that drives fatigue, right? That drives stress, frustration, especially if you've got a couple people doing something together and they're both expecting to do it a different way. Think of point of use, right? Where do people do their work and do they have the things they need in close proximity to where they're working, right? That movement has a big impact, right? Their time means you need more people. More people means you might have struggling cost structure. That might mean it makes decisions on where you go after different revenue, right? So these things have a big impact. Transport is your stuff. And right, a lot of folks when talking to either aviation or transportation, that gets a little, oh, wait a minute, tell me everything I do is waste. Well, no, the customer's willing to pay for it. But are you moving things around? Are you moving things to get to things? Do you have things stored in a way, especially right for your operational teams? Are they having to pull something out to get the next thing? Every time they got to get supplies, they got to move everything to get to it. Do you have the things that are needed the most often, most accessible, and least often, least accessible? How you may not be able to get more space, right? That might not be the right, but can you reduce it, right? So don't always assume you can eliminate the waste entirely. Continuous improvement, right? Not postpone perfection. Make it better. It doesn't have to be perfect. Take the win, go to the next thing, and that's okay. It's better. Take that win. Whether your next biggest problem, solve it. Right. Inventory. Anybody have stuff that you could take your finger and wipe off of? And then there's probably an associated person who says, but we might need it, or we needed it 10 years ago, or but we paid a lot of money for it. Well, when did we pay a lot of money? 1982? Yeah. Right.
Haven't touched it since 1982.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've used quarantine as a strategy before. It's going over here, it's getting locked up. You gotta go talk to this person if you want to get it out. But if it's not needed by a certain time, it's gonna go away. Right? There's a cost to actually holding things, right? If we think of the cargo business, does that take away your ability to hold cargo for something else or to offer an additional service, right? Or in some cases, right, the just-in-time aspect of one of our cargo companies is based out of Miami. And as we wanted to grow the business, how do we do that without increasing our costs? Well, getting another warehouse is not just you incrementally build the building out 3 to 4 feet, right? It's not a little incremental move. It's going and right, having to lease out thousands of square feet from another building. It's a big jump. So how do you make best use of the space by what you have in there? So it wasn't just our own inventory. It was how do we best take care of the customer by moving the things out that we need to move out or not holding the things that we needed to hold. And the right solution was actually talking with our customers and building the relationship of, hey, I know you like to bring it on Wednesday for the Tuesday flight next week, but that means we can't add this extra route for you because we don't have room, right? So those conversations and really engaging with the folks makes it an opportunity, right, to decrease cost, move up revenue, stuff costs. In some case, right, you may have to account for it from a tax perspective, but there is always a cost to things. So make sure it's worth it to you. Anybody in maintenance? Yeah, right. What do we need to hold? Where do we need to hold it? How much of it do we need? What's the likelihood of needing it, right? Does that sound like a familiar conversation? How often? How bad could it be if something goes wrong and we don't have that thing? Yeah.
Well, in this crowd here, where we operate, space is an extreme premium. So, yeah, this is a very big deal.
Yeah,
A building in Miami would cost 10 times, 100 times building out where we're operating.
Yep. And this is not industry specific, right? Every industry has this challenge. There is a hospital group in Seattle. So have anybody heard of Fred Hutch Cancer? Okay. So one of their associate companies, Seattle Cancer Care, needed to build out more space for chemo infusion treatment. Real estate in Seattle is very expensive, right? And they can't just go get another building 2-3 miles away where it's cheaper. They need it in proximity of the people that are working there, right? Where their patients might need to go. So where they focused on was, okay, how do we make the best use of space? What do we do it now in the way we work to reduce it? And what they ended up designing out in their new building was a way for essentially the patient to go, they stay in the room, everybody comes to them, and everything that needs to support them there for their treatment is around the rooms. As opposed to if you've ever had a family member yourself go through, right? Go there, check in, and then they send you down, you go down there, they check your blood. Okay, now go over there and wait until we get your results. Make sure your blood markers are good. Okay, now you can go down there and you can get your chemo, and then you can't leave in case you have a reaction. So you got to go to the waiting room over there and wait, right? So all of that movement of the customer, right? The movement and the transportation of the stuff created a whole lot more space. So by them focusing on how to reduce what we need to best take care of the patient, to do what's really accomplished, it allowed them to build out a building and repurpose an old one, and they only had to get half the square footage that they would have under their old process. So, right, that kept costs down for customers, for their staff. Good way of looking at it. All right, we're gonna come back to that one. So this is the largest waste you will find everywhere, waiting.
Hurry up and wait.
If you map out a process and you put time to every piece in it, guarantee the waiting will always have the largest component in there, right? You're waiting for something. So if you go after any one waste in your business, if you look at anything that you directly have influence on, or you are the business process owner for, it's going after the waiting, right? What are the things that are slowing things down? People waiting for an answer, waiting for information to take the next step, waiting for the thing to do their piece of the process. That is your biggest opportunity right there. We actually tackled this as an executive group in terms of meetings and follow-up actions. So when I did this with our executive team, we actually took them offsite for a day with another company to spend some time. When we came back and started talking through what are the things that we can directly input and do ourselves? What is the thing that we need to do, solve a problem that we own that is directly to us? And we'll talk about how does that look for you. It was the people are constantly waiting for us to do the next piece. You go from meeting to meeting, right? Think of the time, or you go from meeting to this other email or meeting to another phone call. And if somebody needed something from you as a follow-up for it, or they needed an answer, they needed information, when you're going from place to place, how does that cause waiting? Which means you're not getting to it to the end of the day. Or what a lot of us were doing is we were finishing our day and then we were spending an hour or 2 hours on that email to send all the follow-up stuff, which means that the action didn't happen until the next day, right? So what does that do as leadership? So just some changes to how do we have meetings differently? How do we decrease the meetings? How do we look at meetings that we own to say who really does need to be there, who doesn't need to be there? How can we challenge ourselves to have less time? How do we always leave a block of 5 or 10 minutes at the end of every meeting? So everybody can sit there before they leave the room. Okay, everybody send the actions that you need to send before we move on to the next, right? So shrink it down so that the same actions are done, but the waiting gets cut out. Where do you have influence on that one? Okay. This one. Overproduction is kind of a hard one. It's the doing more than what's needed. And usually where this happens is there's not good alignment between groups. It's usually where there's a crossing of one group sending to another group and a lack of knowing what's really needed. Where I've seen this is a lot in technology related items, or where you're doing a project of constant change with technology. There's a lot of assumptions of, well, that group needs me to do this for them to do their part. So items where you tend to have a high technical need, that shows up a lot because they believe they need to produce a whole lot of something that the next group may not actually need the person downstream to do. Anybody work passenger airline? Do you have any airlines that do that? Okay, this is one, we would use it in training for ramp employees in terms of, are you pushing more downstream than the next person can when you're loading the aircraft, right? Are you moving at a constant flow, which is actually faster, right? So helping people understand that, hey, moving at the speed that the next person can actually handle what you're doing, whether it be a container, a bag, a piece of cargo, that actually is faster because you're not constantly stopping and starting, right? Because now you're introducing waiting. You're waiting at one end and waiting for the other. We had a supervisor in our Honolulu operation who thought she was doing something good by making a change to how we load our 767 that goes back and forth from LA. and the number of containers we bring at any one time and put onto the aircraft, the loader at any one time. And would have to sit with her and go, okay, let's watch this, what's happening, was showing how not having just a constant flow going was causing, now these people are waiting. And now these people are waiting at the aircraft, and now these people are waiting on the ramp. And what it actually did is add 15 minutes to the turn. Just by a change of, well, but if we put more, right, if we batch it, if I bring them 4 at one time, it'll actually go faster. And what it actually did was introduce waiting. So are you pushing more than can handle? In a leadership where this can show up is, what are the things you're asking people to do in terms of changes to the business? Have you actually asked the business to do more than they can? And have you created a way for them to say, here's my capacity to do? Do you have a way of seeing that? From a leader perspective, that's a really common, right? And so what that drives is some of those red words, right? They're working the extra hours because the bandwidth's not there, out of a desire, right? Trying to do the right thing. But really, is it more than the business is capable of doing, right? Moving too fast can be a negative. You might actually be doing slower, causing more problems. Somebody worked on 10 projects at one time. Yeah. How well does that go for the task switching?
It's horrible.
Yeah. Yeah. That will be a battle forever, right? Even though our exec team is in agreement of let's do faster, doing more, it's still always oh, but we have this one other thing. Well, I can have my group do this one other thing, right? And that list just starts to get growing. Keeping it visible helps a lot, right? With the overproduction, what are you asking them to do? Do you have a way of seeing it? Can you look at it?
I think one area too that probably most everybody overproduces is information and communication, especially on an operational front.
Yeah.
I mean, when we change our flight schedule or something like that, which multiple changes per day, you update it in one system because the systems don't talk. You're now duplicating that information in all these other systems.
Yep.
Placing phone calls, letting people know they are updating their systems, and then you make another change and it's just this constant, you know.
One change requires an entire
Yeah,
hour.
it's like a ripple effect of everybody just reduplicating the same information, whereas if you had true integration of systems and processes,
Yeah.
one change would automatically push that out.
Yeah, then we see that with like email groups. Like I think of poor maintenance control over here because, you know, we'll have like, if you say something breaks on a plane, they have their internal communication, which I end up being on a bunch of email groups. I'll see that email go out, then I'll see another one go out to a different email group. of the
Yeah,
same
have them
people,
on it just
and
in
then
case. They might not
another
need
one.
it,
I'm going,
right? Yeah.
This poor controller now has had to spend all that time sending multiple emails for the same notice.
Yeah, we're, my business intelligence manager, something that I have for focusing on here for this year is how do we actually start to eliminate shift reports?
Yeah.
So how do we make where that information is already visible in a way and expose it through either dashboards or for those who really need it, they can voluntarily sign up, or it's there where they need it, right? Now, I don't want people and leaders who really do need to make decisions having to go to 10 different places. But I can have my BI manager or BI analyst build out a dashboard in an hour or two, which saves how much time for leaders across the days, weeks, months of seeking out information, or right, 4 different people building on a shift email that goes out to half the people who don't read it. And some of the people who do need to read it are getting 10 of them. So they only read the ones that they think they need for the next day.
Yeah.
So think of the time impact, right? The investment of getting rid of to save.
You're willing to lend out your BI manager.
Yeah, exactly.
Dashboard out and go.
She, we got a fantastic person. She helped build out the BI program for King County Metro and Sound Transit. So transportation is known, right? Plane versus trains and buses, people, cargo, maintenance schedules, scheduled maintenance, unscheduled maintenance. Yeah. It's all just different items, same things. Yeah.
It's strange to me.
Okay, so last one, and then let's take a break. So processing, and I'm gonna break this one up, because it really, what you wanna do is look at it a couple different ways, right? So. There's over processing, right? Anybody have anything go wrong in the business, and the automatic reaction, I think I said it earlier, was, well, we need to add an inspection. Let's add an audit. Let's have the soups check that on every flight. Let's have the leads mark off whether it was done on every single, right? So what actually is right now, I'm not going to say that audit is not the right risk mitigation in some cases, right? But it's a very natural tendency to go add the step, right? And if you think of certain roles in your organization, every organization has a group or set of people that have this happen to them. It's very easy to add those really small things, to keep adding those small things, right? Think passenger airlines, it tends to be flight attendants, customer service agents, right? Well, we'll just have them check, we'll have them ask, we'll have them say, right? On the cargo side, it tends to be the leads and the cargo agents, right? We'll have them look, we'll have them check, we'll have them read it back, we'll have them call in, right? So you think of what are those roles in your business, it's really easy to just keep adding, right? And now your process has just grown. And is it actually adding any value? One, is it actually addressing where the problem was? And two, what's it actually costing, right? You may not be able to see in your cash flow, but how much time is it taking? Because there is a cost. And so what's the risk? Well, it only takes 30 seconds. Okay, let's add that up. I had an IT director, I meet with her every week for coaching, and she was pushing back on a couple things that she had actually seen were a problem. I'm like, well, wait a minute. Let's add that up. You're telling me that it only takes you this long. Yeah. Well, how many times a week do you do it? Well, I do it about 4 times. Okay. So 15 minutes, 4 times a week, that's an hour. 50 plus hours a year of your time. What could you do with 50 hours? Which, by the way, for context, our focus for her to help her team was for her to not work 10-hour days and work all day Saturday, and she would jump in and do emails on Sunday. We were going to lose her, right? That's where it would have gone. We would have lost a great employee. So, right, with the goal being, how do we better use your time? Whenever somebody goes, it does not take them long to do it. That flag, right? That is an over-processing flag. Okay, wait a minute. Let's get a whiteboard. How many people are going to do this? Well, we're going to do it on every flight. Okay, so this many flights a day. How long is it going to take them to do it? Okay, think of that, right? What's the cost or the risk? And where, right, on-time performance, having the aircraft utilization, right, having it fly when it needs to is so critical for all of us. What is the impact to that? And okay, what are the other things that were just it doesn't take very long. It only takes a minute. It only takes them a second. Quantify it, write it out, see. You might be okay with it. It might be an acceptable cost or risk, but know what that number is, because it can add up very quickly, especially when you start talking more than one person doing it. It adds up fast. Technicians are another one. We'll have them do that check. We'll add this to that task card. Well, how often are they doing that task card? Every day on every aircraft? Yeah. How long? Well, it's just 5 more minutes. Okay. How many task cards have we done that to in the last 6 months? Right. So thinking of those, really easy, right, to just add as opposed to, but what could we take out that's not adding the value? Or what are things that maybe we just haven't looked at again that we could take out to be a balance to it? Under processing. So where this typically comes in is on a safety or compliance. So risk, right? We may not actually have a choice in some cases on whether we want to do something, right? Now, we may not agree that regulatory obligation is actually adding any value, but we don't have a choice, right? Safety is another one where we may have something happening either from a safety of flight, compliance, people getting injured perspective. Okay, are we actually doing what we need to? It might come back in, we're not doing enough processing and communication. We're not doing enough processing and training, right? I'll see a lot of companies talk with, it's well, yeah, we taught them all that when they started. Well, what about after? And what did your training look like when they started? Oh, well, we put them in class for 4 weeks. And then we have them go to the plane for 2 weeks. Okay, what do you think the retention is, right? So back to what I said at the beginning, right? You retain 9% of what you get from a lecture. For folks who are doing that kind of work, is that the environment they're used to being in, which is sitting in a class for a break. So how do you actually do it the right way so you're not under processing, but you're providing what's necessary for it? And then I'm going to do the last one, which is bad. The process is actually not capable of doing what you need it to do. And that's usually hidden. So you probably as a leader don't even know what those are because somebody has come up with a Band-Aid process to fix it in their one place. Those will be most found where you have few people doing it. So you ask somebody to do something, you provided a way you wanted them to do it, but it doesn't work because the right people weren't engaged to create how that process needs to work, and people have found workarounds. So, right, you got one person to one person to one person in this chain process going through. That's where you'll probably find those because they've had to figure out a different way to do it. And usually it's introducing, what's that?
So the key, what you just said, the key word is find them. But everything needs to be followed up with a measurement of that
Not,
process. So is the process working? Is it a good one? Is it doing too much?
yeah,
You
and I'd
never
be,
know that if you don't go and measure something. You put it-
well, I'd be careful with measure. It doesn't always need okay, we're gonna have a timestamp on this for every day 4, right? I had an aircraft engineer. He was trying to help, he got feedback from technicians and he was looking at a problem, they're saying, hey, the information that I keep up to date, make accessible for them in this part of the manual, they're saying it just takes too long for them to get what they're trying to get to every time they need it. It's like, I'm struggling with knowing how do I know if I made it better other than just asking them. I said, well, what is it takes too long, right? To me, that's at the time, but go talk with them and understand what do they mean when they say it takes too long. And so just talking to his customer, what he got back was, well, I got to go through 5 or 6 click screens to get to it here and 7 or 8 to get to it here. And so, right, the easy measure was, I need to just make it fewer clicks for them to get to the information they need. Great measure, right? Not something you need to keep measuring long-term, but it was a good one-time metric to know that's what improvement is. That's what would be good in that case. People will jump to time and dollar measurements, and that's not always necessary for what you're trying to do. Okay, we're gonna break. Can see let's take a mental pause looks. Grab coffee, grab water, grab snacks. Does anybody know where the restrooms are?
Restrooms are just to the right here, the woman's quite the ways down.
Thank you. Unmute.
I was just checking to see if Julie was listening.
And she has a ruthless.
So I don't want to go to the next part yet. I want to kind of stop. And like I said, I typically have a general outline we kind of go through. But I want this to be as of most value to you, right? And the challenges that each of you face might be very different than what other groups that I'll talk with do. And so I want to just kind of pause for a minute and go, what are the questions kind of popped into mind as you think of your own space, right? And think of yourself and the team you directly, what you do and you're part of it. I want you to be a little selfish in your thinking, because what I really want you to focus is what does this do for me? How do I personally need to apply it to my things, right? Because for you to be a good coach, right, for your team and to really be able to have the right conversations, ask the right questions, I want you to feel really comfortable with it, right? And we all do that through repetition, right? Doing it over and over, taking some problems, repeatedly doing it. It's all about you. So it really is all about you. So our role as leaders, right? How do we shape this as being part of the culture? Where do you want to be using this in your part of the business? So as we think about, right, the waste, and as we talk about, right, the impact of what that does, not just on our business, but ourselves and our people, what are some of the things that come to mind? What are some questions or things that popped in your head? This is back to that participate part.
You had a big one when you said over processing, maintenance control. You have some opportunities to improve.
You can say problem, it's okay. No judgment. Over processing is the one you'll have more, right, of all of those. So that's also a caution, is it's really easy to go, oh, we're under processing in 80% of them. No, it's probably over processing. The rest each make up about 5%, but they're there. Don't ignore them.
I think for us, inventory and movement, transportation really are huge ones. The multiple facilities in different places, so I don't think any of us really have an inventory list of what's where per se, so.
The fun of doing inventory work, right, getting the people and saying, hey, let's look at what do you really need here? You tell us. What do we actually need in this space? What have we actually used, right? Giving them some freedom and making it comfortable, right? Some folks have trouble getting rid of, so you got to really have some good, build a safe space comfortable for them. But it's really fun when you go through that, and you can do it in a concentrated, let's just take a couple days, right? Let's just go pre-get a dumpster. We filled up 4 full-length dumpsters once in the Honolulu warehouse, just taking a team of 10 people and going through and saying, what do you need and not need to do your work? What's in the way? What's old? What's just not necessary? What do we not use anymore? Because we don't even have those aircraft. 4 dumpsters that we got out just in a 5-day window. So you can really clear things out, and the benefit to the employees, the reaction of that space, just feeling cleaner and being more
Yeah.
well defined. It's
Declutter.
amazing the emotional difference that you see employees being proud of the workspace.
I was just gonna say the waiting one for her on the operational side is pretty huge for us, especially if it involves regulatory approvals.
Yeah,
Like, we're dealing with an issue from April of last year that we would like to close out, but it falls down our court. And so it's super frustrating that something that was deemed critical by an external agency is still, 10 months into it,
Yep.
not resolved.
that's
And not because we don't want to, because we're waiting.
that's a good
Waiting to implement,
example.
Waiting to make it work, waiting to do safety assurances, everything is waiting. That's just one example, but that happens a lot, regulatory.
The outside items, the government regulatory, right, weather, fuel, those are good examples to look at in terms of. It's easy to go with you may have some folks who go, well, we don't have any control, it's the government, we don't have any control to weather. If we don't have any control over the price of fuel. Challenge that, right? Just because you don't have 100%, where do you have some ways that you contribute? So where you may have waiting, what are some things you can do ahead of time? Well, it might mean, hey, maybe we need to invest in some relationship building. Maybe we need to collaborate with a couple of companies, build a cohort. Not having control over fuel prices. Okay, long term, Is there something we can do on how we do our weight and balance? Do we maybe need to look at a change to our system? Do we need to look at maybe how we plan our routes? Maybe we need to be looking 10, 20 years out of what are our aircraft, what's on it, add wing limits, right? So what is the piece that you can control to decrease it? Those outside entity ones can be really hard, right? You might not have one control totally, or you may not have visibility to where it's at in, and those can get very challenging. So, okay, but what can we do on the receiving end? So when it is decided, now we're ready to go faster. What can we do to prepare so that there's no waste once that piece comes across? So push that to the, okay, we don't have total control, but what's the waste we can get out, or how do we block the process to keep waste out? So we're ready to go as soon as we get what we need. What else?
I see, like, for me personally, the overproduction is something that I can work on. I'm an accountant by education and by nature, so it's just innate in me to like overanalyze, tick and tie and balance and make sure everything's perfect. And oftentimes there's a lot of wasted time in that.
Yeah,
And then I tend to push that down on my team, even if not intentionally, because they're trying to make sure that they're trying to do what they think I want to have done.
company controllers don't always like me because we disagree on audit requirements versus mistake proofing. Yeah. So accounting standards, right, set forth that are a normal way to do. So when you've been in that role for 10, 20 years, right, that's a normal way. So having, right, to stop and go, wait a minute, this is a change to thinking and doing. That can be a little bit of that's a norm. We should do that. Okay, but what's the value to it, right? Is that actually introducing waste? Is it actually causing a price that we're having to pay? Can we avoid the problem to begin with? How do we build it out? How do we get controls?
I think something to be mindful too, from a leadership perspective is the concept of continuous improvement, where you think you're making improvements and reducing waste in one area, is zooming out, looking across silos and seeing if you're introducing waste into another department or another sector of your business that you may not have oversight of. So that constant feedback loop of going through, okay, did this actually really reduce waste, or are we just shifting waste somewhere else?
Yeah, so sub-optimizing, right? I'm gonna make a improvement here at the expense of another. Who's your customer, right? Who's the downstream recipient? Did you talk with them, right? There's very little that we will ever do in our business or work that has a single stakeholder, right? There's always somebody who needs that information, needs to play a part in it. So if you're gonna make a change, even if it's a very small one that is mostly you, have you had even a short, quick discussion and realize these don't have to be huge, right? You may have heard a lot around, oh, well, these lean workshops and we do 5 days or get 3 days and put people together. The going through and talking about a problem can be a 10-minute conversation of, hey, I got this thing that we're dealing with. Here's what I'm seeing is the problem. Do you agree? Yeah, I do. And let's not forget about that part. Okay, so which of these wastes is causing it? Well, we're having to wait because so-and-so is sending that information every Friday. Well, how come they're sending it every Friday? Well, I think their last manager told them to. Oh, well, then let's just get it changed to Wednesday and then we've got it for the meeting and it's not delayed. Cool. Done. Right? So those conversations don't always have to be, but you're still going through the problem. You're still identifying the waste. You're still agreeing with each other on the solution and making it really simple. It's just how do you build that into the conversation, right? And having people actually recognize, yeah, there's waste we want to get out of this.
Where would you put in the last minute emergency, I need it now? Even though the person that needs it now knew about it 2 weeks ago.
Defect. Defect.
Are they online?
I don't know.
We'll go safe. To me, that would be a defect, and right, defects cause other waste. So what is it doing? Are you now dropping other stuff in order to get that done? We just introduced waiting on another item that didn't have waiting intended, right? So you might be late doing something, now other people might be. So there's and this is culturally right hard, you gotta work towards it. But typically what I recommend is in a confined leadership group is coming to some realization or agreement for how you work, that we're not gonna do that. So I'm really sorry that it was, but we're not gonna delay 5 things to fix 1, right? I can get to that on Monday, but these other items need to happen on time too. Callously, right, we can do the whole, right, your emergency or your lack of planning doesn't constitute an emergency on my part, right? But we work with people, right? We want to build relationships with each other. We do want to help each other. But there is, right, there's actually value and good feedback, especially if you've got a good relationship with that person of saying, hey, here was the impact. This is what the impact is going to be of me having to drop it. I think it's good for people to know, right, that feedback. So here, I'm gonna give you, we're gonna deviate a second for this. All right, so KRAF. When you think of folks, right, in the area that are trying to do something, right, or maybe they're being successful or they're struggling with, or they're constantly being laid on, oh, I forgot about, right? So an easy way to look through, it's good from a positive coaching and also a, okay, where do I need to focus to help this person be successful? They're having a hard time and I want them to grow. They have capability. So 1, do they have the knowledge? Okay. Do they actually have the knowledge that they need to do the role? Now, right, hopefully if they're in the role, they do, but the world changes, right? So where they might have had it with what the role was, maybe they don't now, and we need to help them with that, right? Have they actually been given the responsibility for it? Has somebody actually sat with them and said, hey, this is part of your role. Here's what I'm actually needing you to do. This is the level of performance I'm needing you to work towards, right? This is one, I'll go through this model when I'm doing individual coaching with folks, when they're trying to grow their CI skills on, hey, let's talk through this as you're trying to help your team make a change and how their own leaders, right, need to be, hey, how do we give them the knowledge, right, of what we're changing? How do we make sure they understand what their responsibility is? How are we going to hold them accountable, right? Positive and negative, right? We tend to associate accountability as a negative, but also how, right, from an accountability, do we recognize when they're doing good? And then how do we do the feedback, right? Hey, where are you doing? How are you doing? Here's what I'm seeing. Let's focus on this, the 2-way communication part of it. So as we're trying to help somebody, right, who might be doing this is a repeat thing, you don't have to be a leader of that person, right, to apply it. And you don't have to sit there and go, I'm going to walk you through KRAF. But you can actually, right, say, hey, I can't do this every Friday, right? That request really does need to come in. This is the impact. And make sure that they understand the responsibility in that relationship, that part of the process, right? Because that's a defect that's causing more waste, right? We don't want that. We don't want to accept that. And so let's fix it. So here's an easy way to think about it. So does that person have the knowledge? Do they actually have the knowledge to do it correctly? And is that why the request is always coming late? Or maybe they just don't have the responsibility. Nobody's told them when they need to make that request, when that needs to come in by. You might not be the one to hold them accountable. That might be somebody else, right? So feedback to a leader, good and bad, right? I love it when I hear from folks something that somebody did well on my team to help. It's great. I want to give them that feedback. I don't sit with my team. They are work all over the place and travel to support the different leaders in the operation. So, right, if you've got people like that, getting that feedback is very valuable. Yeah, don't accept defects. Because not only did you pay the price, but somebody else is too. But do it with a lot of grace and love. Because you got to work with that person again, right? What else? Got problems popping in your head the last little bit of, I want to go fix that. Not a rhetorical question. All right, So before we go to another part, so I want to talk a little bit more. Just a little. And I'm just gonna do day after tomorrow. So think of ownership of, right? So we're gonna come back to the leader aspect, right? So the roles in the organization, right? Don't skip levels. Focus on, right? How do you set an expectation of work, right? So as we talk about continuous improvement in your role, what I want you to really hone in on for the last little bit, and we're gonna do some walkthrough of some problems in your areas. I'm gonna give you something we're gonna do together. But I want it to be really specific to you, because I want you to be able to take something and go, okay, I can see the thought process of going, how do I do this? How do I do it with my team? But I want you to be really selfish about, I want to get really comfortable with it. Because if you're comfortable with it, right, you're comfortable bringing up the different wastes. You don't need to know my heart. You can have something, you'll get used to it. But if you start calling out the, hey, so that's a waste, that doesn't actually help the process, right? And you start making that part of our conversation, that starts to actually change the way you start talking with your team, the same way they start bringing stuff to you. So the tool we're going to get to in a bit, you'll see it in other companies by a whole lot of different names. Think of it as the, hey, as I start to get this thought process in how I work with my team, think of this form as the, we've thought through it enough that we can actually have a conversation about it form. In fact, there's a company in Seattle that spent some time with, somebody comes into his office of his leadership and they want to work through a problem or say, hey, I want to do something to fix. First thing he's going to say is, well, where's the problem? Show me you've thought through this enough that we can actually have a conversation of what it is we need to do and what it is we're trying to fix out of this. Now we can have a conversation. Otherwise, we're starting from nothing. I don't actually understand why it is we're having a conversation yet. So it's just part of how they operate as a business now. So today, tomorrow, day after tomorrow, right? So the day after tomorrow, right? That's the long-term look at, but it's also the delayed feedback, right? And that's the space where, as leaders and senior leaders, that's where we spend a lot in. The negative is the long-term feedback, right? It might be months, it might be years. And so having to think through the decisions that you make, how you work with your team, how do you do things now to have a longer term benefit, or even to avoid, right? It can be a hard case to make of, we're gonna do something to avoid, right? If you've ever had to make that case, that's a very challenging one to make, but that can very much be in that world for that day after tomorrow thinking. Now you think of your tomorrow, right? Think of that as maybe your operational managers, maybe some of your supervisors a little bit into, but more of the, okay, how do we take the system processes that we have and we're using it to think ahead, to prepare, to plan for, right? To avoid some of those wastes, right? Now we're getting into the execution aspect of it. So this might be the, hey, you've done your longer term fleet plan, you've built out your budget of your block hours and where you want to fly for that year. Now we're getting into the, okay, we're doing the final prep for it, right? So you might be getting your bids ready for your pilots. You might be getting those last schedules refined. But then you get into your today. Okay, well, we got more cargo here versus there. So we're going to make a change of one flight. We got a crew calling sick. We're going to make up, right? Those should be very defined black and white processes as much as possible, because that's where you don't have the time to address any of your variability in your business, right? If you've got variability happening today, there's a cost that's going to be higher. Close-in schedule changes, even if it's good for a customer, right? There's probably an extra price to pay. Maybe you pay your pilots more, maybe you got to pay a little premium, maybe you got to get some overtime of your staff. So there's always a price to changes the closer in. So when you think about your time, right, and the things that you're doing each day, as we talk about how you break your day at, where are you? Are you here as much as you would like to be? Are you spending more into the tomorrow and today?
Being more reactive versus proactive. Is that a rhetorical question? No, I am definitely living more in today than tomorrow, and I should be, for sure.
Like, I think aviation.
think the aviation's today and tomorrow. You're worried about the day-to-day operations, but John's gotta worry about what's gonna happen tomorrow with the end of the week.
But who should be? The right role, focusing on the today
Yeah.
versus the past, right? So yes, the business, all business has aspects of today, tomorrow, day after tomorrow. Every industry does, right? Doesn't matter what it is. But where are you spending the time so that your people can spend the right time?
Do you feel like in your role, are you where you should be? Are you thinking, with considering your role, are you thinking more long-term, or are you living in the day, trying to put out the dumpster fires, constantly dealing with those issues, when realistically, that's, that should be, the processes that you have in place should be able to effectively handle any hiccup that may come today or tomorrow.
In coaching sessions with folks, a common question I'll ask is, can you go on vacation and not have to worry about things getting done that need to get done? Did that make you uncomfortable? Yeah, see? Now I want to recognize, right, the smaller a company is, right, that might be more of a challenge to create processes that work like that, right? Where it might be one person doing a role, where there might be a whole department of it at a larger company, right? So my role where I am, and my team of four, there were 30 plus at the last company I was at. So, right, a difference in who does what, how do you, right, allocate the time and prioritize, it can look very different. So I want to acknowledge that, right, but still creating that space. So what does it mean? What's the impact? If you're not spending as much time here, what is the impact to your team? What does
Yeah,
it do?
they're in their negative zones.
Steeper corrections,
Say more. What do you mean steeper correction?
like if you're focusing more on the day after tomorrow, you can make an incremental change to where if it's not working out, you have to make a sharper correction to go back the other way.
Yeah,
I guess you could say more incremental changes if you're focused further out or at a higher level.
yep,
Kind of like, I don't know, how I was taught to drive by my dad at a young age is look further down the road so you make more minor corrections than if you're staring right at the end of the hood, you're jerking it around a little bit more.
yeah.
A whole bunch of people in that vehicle with you, they're gonna feel all those corrections if you're staring right in front of you.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're trying to do better on our schedule planning, right? That's an area we're trying to put some greater long-term focus and build some more process into. So it's an under process for us. The impact, right, is okay, what's the cost then of our pilots? We have a labor contract. So if I don't get some of those things, right, better define clarity, less variability before the bid goes out to the pilots, there's a big cost impact, right? If we want to make changes closer in that we didn't put intentionality in. So how do we think further down as opposed to, okay, I'm just gonna look at tomorrow and decide what changes do I want to make and go out and sell a bunch of charters that I didn't plan ahead for. And now I gotta pay extra pilots, get more premium, throw them out in open time, move schedules around, right? So there's a cost. And right now we get back to those red words, the stress of having to do the last minute changes. So yeah, those steeper corrections, money as well as they can hurt up there, right?
So I got a question, Jeff, and that is, how do you get your managers to focus more on day after tomorrow planning than today? I noticed that people I work with, myself included, you sometimes gravitate towards today because you can put something in place, you can fix it, and you get, I don't know, dopamine release, who knows?
Yeah.
When you worry about day
Yes.
after tomorrow, it's like, oh, let's talk about something imaginary 3 weeks from now. And it changes 3 times, so people are like, let's not we'll deal with that when we deal with that. So how can we as managers get people to focus on day after tomorrow? My solutions is regular meetings, short meetings, but if you, like, some examples we have is a Wednesday training meeting for half an hour. We're gonna just go through it to make sure that there's no hiccups. A month from now, people are always like, oh, that's
Yep.
such a waste of time. Like, okay, let's walk through it. Oh, we forgot to book that guy a hotel. Oh, we forgot his, dog needs surgery, and we fix those, and then we kind of get a dopamine release by, now we can not be stressed next week because we found it, but it's so hard to get people to come to those meetings and get engaged. So
Yeah.
what solutions have you found to get your managers to go to day after tomorrow?
do they even recognize there's the problem,
Right, okay.
right? So even tackling the why it's important for them to be there, do they even recognize there's a problem there, right? I mean, first and foremost, before we go any further, right, even if somebody's bringing something to me and saying, hey, I think we need to do this as a company, I'd like to get it discussed as a company initiative. Okay, well, what's the problem we're solving? Or what's the opportunity we need to do? What's the business change that is driving this, right? What is the call to action that makes me go, okay, yes, that does fit into this. Let's start moving it down, right? The discussion path, get it into the process. So does the team even recognize this isn't actually a good state for us? This actually isn't positive. Here's what it means. This is what it does to us. And yes, you will get some groups of, okay, but that's theirs to solve. That's for them to take care of. But we have an input, right? There is an impact to us. We have a role in this. We got to do this together. So do they even have recognition the problem is there that needs to be solved? Because otherwise, right, you can make them come to the meeting, right? You can push them into the meeting, but you're not going to have the conversation that you want to have. You're not going to get the feedback, right, that you need. You're not going to get the, I need to do follow-up to help fix this and come up with ideas because they're not going to recognize it. But that also comes from the, right, the not skipping levels, starting with the leadership. So are you actually practicing the problem solving that you want them to be doing? Are they actually seeing you do it before you actually start engaging them more in doing it, right? So are you modeling it?
You said it right from the beginning of the problem defined is half solved. So,
Yeah.
if you go to them with the actual problem, the definition of the problem, show that to them through positive and effective communication. The halfway there. And through my life, I've learned that you don't just go to them with a problem, you go with a solution or points towards a solution.
Pet projects, right? I mean, that very term came because I want to do it, but I don't really have a justifiable case, but I want to do it. This will be great. I'd like this. My team would like this. Okay. I mean, that's the very definition of pet projects, right? Solutions in search of a problem. I want to change this. Well, why? Well, I'll go figure it out. No, we go the other way, right? What are the problems? What are the opportunities? What is the vision of the business? And where are we not aligned that we need to do something different, right? What's the driving reason? Now back into what do we need to do about it?
So yesterday, excuse me, we sat, had a speaker discussing, in a sense of lack of better words, dealing with the generational differences of employees. and
Okay.
people. And on a side conversation at the end I had with them, he was discussing a certain generation or young generation that, that are gonna, if you just bring them a rule, they're gonna rebel.
Yeah.
But if you bring them and work with them, bring the reason and have them work to hopefully again, getting to the rule themselves, then there's gonna be a successful outcome. And it was something that really resonated with me, thinking, because it's so easy for us to just go in and say, all right, there's what it is. I do it all the damn time, excuse me. I mean, it really hit home, but if you work through the, bring them and have them talk through the reasoning with you, like talking through the problem, what like you did, what you talked about, okay, let's talk through this. They got to the end and then eventually they're gonna see that planning.
Okay.
Yeah.
It has a purpose.
Yeah.
That 30-minute meeting has a purpose and there's satisfaction from that 2 weeks down the road or something.
Have you seen the YouTube video of the submarine captain talking about his crew and how he taught them to, I want you to tell me the intent of what you're doing. I don't want you to ask permission for what you're doing. Go just search on YouTube, submarine captain, you'll see it's
around.
yeah. So you'll see it's like an animated drawing as he's talking through, but it's the aspect of, right, I mean, think of yourself. Do you really want somebody coming and going, you're going to do it this way? That's all there is. I'm not going to engage in it, right? Do any of your companies do engagement surveys? Once a year, other year? Okay, some yes, some no. Okay, well, Ryan will. So it'll be this year. So we do it every other year. There is a reason, right, where they have validated some of the questions that they ask in it, right? And one of those questions that is very normal is the on that agree to disagree scale, I'm involved in decisions that impact me, right? Or I have opportunities to provide input on how we should work or the things that I do. There's usually a couple questions around that because it really ties back to the, are you engaging with your people, right? Are you actually involving them and helping design? And think of it from an accountability perspective, right? If we think back to the KRAF, responsible and holding accountable, is it actually fair for us to have a senior leader or middle level leader know absolutely everything about everything in the area that they're overseeing, right? Should we actually expect them to be able to come up with every answer and know everything and see every piece of the business that they work in? No, right? And as you brought up earlier, right, as the companies grow, right? If you want to grow, if you want to get to the maturity of operating at either a larger level or you need to be more complex to even sustain, that becomes far less possible, right? So then your ability to be here, if we're setting an expectation of, well, you have to know absolutely everything that goes on here because I need you to come up with all those solutions. Is that really practical when you think of all of the tasks and processes that live here? It's not, right? So you need to engage with that. But as we talk about the how do you live in this space, this is right why I push on the, hey, you got to start with the senior leadership, right? Start with yourself, get yourself. You need to pull out of this because the impact is not just the red words, but actually keeping them, your leaders, from being able to live where they need to live, right? If you're taking up the decision-making, are you actually allowing them to learn and grow, right? So some of those words we have red and green, the challenge, right, that we enjoy, where people want to actually grow in their skills. So to that question of, can you go on PTO and know that things are taken care of? If you're not, right, living enough here and you're living too much here, that's not possible. So that was a big focus with that IT director that I spent time with was, how do we need to get you here? What are those things? And it's not an all at once. We spent over a year on it. And she's just now at the point where she's not getting on weekends. Her days are just now getting below so that they're not 10 hours every day. And it was simple things like, why do I have to do all the ordering of things for all of our different locations for the different supply rooms? I need to get a couple other people on board and understand what they can and can't and just give them an accountability, right? Make sure they understand what's their limits. But does she really need to be ordering all the keyboards and all the mice and all the extra laptops and all the cases? No, she doesn't. So just little things like that over time that she was able to do, and her team's response to that has been really positive. So we're just now starting to spend more time with her team and her two supervisors on how can they just constantly find little things and make it. And it's not getting permission to fix it. It's being given the time to fix it. And they've come up with some good stuff. Some of it is we're finding that if we change the information that's in the auto email when a ticket's submitted for help, people are actually getting the problem resolved because they just didn't know something. So they're starting to find those things that are bringing their own workloads down just by over the time of her modeling it, the same behavior.
Restart,
What's that?
restart your computer, that fixes 90.
That actually is on one. If you pull down you're having, did you restart it? Did you do,
Did you try turning it off and back on?
yes.
I think going back to what you're talking about too, about trying to get your managers engaged. Over the last decade or so, doing what I've done, you deal with new people at various ages. Some people just don't understand the value of what you're trying to get them to do. Like you get so used to doing your role and your task and you understand the value and you see why and you've got the process in your mind. But the people you're dealing with have never been in said industry or never dealt with said tasks. And so they can't clearly define what the value is to them in their own time savings and their own management of their own team or what have you. So you have to somehow lead them, essentially, lead the horse to the water and then go, this is why you drink, it's because when you can lead a horse to water, but it's not just gonna drink it just because it's told it to. So if they don't physically feel the impact of what you're trying to accomplish, they're going to continue to resist change. Right? They're just going to choose not to see the value, whether you tell them it's a value or not. Especially with the younger generation.
So you brought up earlier, right, the dopamine release, right? That immediacy of that feedback, right? You lose that, right? And I brought that up earlier that you will have folks that'll struggle with that. We do. Our tech ops VP is putting a lot of intention around that in the maintenance group with some of the changes he's trying to make. How we do aircraft planning, thinking further ahead. How do we have the right parts in the right place, right? How do we change our program to have some scheduled maintenance to improve our reliability where maybe it doesn't come from the manufacturer, right? So there are some folks that are struggling with that right now in our business because they're used to being, right, the savior of the day that jumps in is able to do it, and they get that call and they're able to help. And at 2 a.m., no, I don't mind you calling me and waking me up every day at 2, right? But there's a price to pay, right? There absolutely is a price to pay in terms of we have one person who can solve it, and if that person's not accessible, what happens, right? So from is that right for the employee? No, it's just not right. Do they enjoy being in that role though? They do. So we have to help them move out of it. And that was a senior director who was in that we're really struggling. It's a couple. So how, right, do we help those people recognize the greater value, right, that they bring to the business and why that's so much better for them? And it might mean some regular interaction, right, to making them see how good, right? We all want to get feedback of how are we doing, and we like to know if we're doing something to contribute in a positive way. And if somebody's been getting it here on a daily basis, how do we help them, right? So they still feel they're adding value where they really are, and they move into that day after tomorrow. That's a hard thing for some folks. I don't want to undersell it. It really is hard, and some folks won't make that change. They won't.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that feel like they thrive on living today, putting out the dumpster fire and
Yes.
fixing all the problems. But they undersell to themselves the negatives of it, whether it be their own immediate health, their family life.
Yeah.
Right, there's so many people that live in the firefighter mentality. I mean, I've done it for years too. And you don't see it immediately, but it's time to then go, oh, wow, doing this has really either messed with my health, or it's really messed with my family life, or it's messed with my other personal endeavors. You lose track of your day after tomorrow, essentially.
Yeah.
So it accentuates those things, but that dopamine kick it feels good, but
Yep.
Your tomorrow and your day after tomorrow always suffers for it.
Yeah.
So it's a hard rut to get out of.
Start with yourself, right? You have to move yourself into that space more first, piece at a time, process task at a time, right? Work on one, work with the leader, right? Because it's a great thing to tell one of your own leaders, yeah, I'd like you to be taking on more of this, right? That's a great growth. You've already shown some, let's build you up there, right? Go through that KRF. What do they need to know of knowledge? Make sure they recognize, right, the responsibility you're giving them, right? Good to have clarity. Give them, hold accountable, give them feedback, right? Piece at a time. That's how you start to move. And that's how you start to move them, right? Because you need them also to pull away so that the people of today can focus on the things of today, right? Because if you've got more leaders moving further to this place, what do you think for folks that are in like a maintenance control role or a crew scheduling role, or right when they're needing to make decisions? What do you think they're feeling? I gotta check with everybody.
Chaos.
Yeah. 5 people are gonna micromanage me, right? I'm gonna have to check with 3 people before I say yes. I gotta send that shift briefing to 18 different groups, right? On what I did, and I'm gonna get an email back saying I made the wrong call for 2 of them. Right? I mean, let's be real, right? That's probably what you would hear of feedback, even if that's not actually every day. That's probably what they feel, right? So from a stress load, how things get done, what does that introduce for waste, right? Waiting over processing. Yeah.
So like if you're a manager, you should be living in the tomorrow and day after tomorrow, and you should have overlap with your team on the today and tomorrow.
As a general, I think you need to look at roles. What I want to be careful is what might be a director, senior director. One company might be a VP at another, might be a soup at another. But as a general, yeah, look at what's the structure. Who should really be living where, right? Where should they be getting majority?
Yeah.
I look at some of our directors, right? And They should probably be about 50% here, 30-40% here, and 10% here, right? It's the, okay, did the things that we said we were gonna do pan out the way we thought, right? Keeping an eye on, but not necessarily making the decision makers of, right? Their managers and soups should really be helping drive the decisions, right? Because this should be known. If you've got a process that's clear, right, communicated, taught, reinforced, that should be much more black and white. Takes time to get there, though. I will fully admit it takes time. Okay, let's do this. And before I give it to you, so this is remember I said I don't like to focus on tools. If anybody's ever spent time reading books or watching videos or heard us talking about Toyota and doing continuous improvement, lean, Kaizen. Okay, so there are different terms. So I stay away from the Japanese terms because to me it's waste. If you have to ask me, what does that mean? So you probably notice I don't use them. Other companies aren't the same. They'll do it. And sometimes that's because they've hired coaches from Toyota or Japan to be engaged with. I like to stay away from for the most part. There's a couple that we stay with just because it is the term, what it is. Toyota builds tools to apply CI because to them, it was the tool for the problems that they're facing. So what I'm always careful with, and I want to make sure you understand is, hey, it's not the tool, right? It's the approach that I'm trying to convey across. What I want to walk you through, and we'll talk through it very relatable to you, is this is just helping the thought process, right? So this is eventually where you get to the point where you can have this as a conversation with somebody on your team, right? Or you're trying to think through, this is have we thought through it well enough to actually talk about what the solution really is for them? So think of it that way. We're going to go through it. I want to give you some framework of, here's what I'd like you to think of in terms of problems. You'll probably have some bigger ones, but I'm going to give you some examples of what some of our leaders have done and what other folks that I've coached individually have focused on that have actually been more helpful in terms of what are some of those first problems for you to take a look at. So I printed out enough. There's a blank one you can hang on to if you want. I'm going to have the email when I send you a couple of things to have as reference after as well. It'll be in Word form, not PDF, so you can actually use it. So I hate when PDF stuff gets sent after conferences and then I got to rebuild it if I want to use it. So grab one, grab a pen. This is the participate, actually use part. Because I want to walk you through from a thought process perspective. And so I'll kind of tell from a facilitation perspective and feedback from others. The reason that I like to do this actively as part of the session is leaders learn a lot from each other and hearing how others are tackling similar problems. How was somebody else thinking through the waste? How are they writing down the problem that they have? How did they get to that solution? So it's great to hear how others are doing the same. And there's some safety and community too. Does anybody need a pen? Okay. Yep, so this is one of the places that we do. So if you don't know, Kaizen means good change. And it is such a standard term. I really wrestled with, do we want to keep it or not? Internal. I took the branding off, so feel free to steal. For the record, absolutely nothing that I've shared with you or talked through today is all mine, right? There's a lot of communities of CI practitioners and leaders around the country. We've got a group of us, multiple companies that we've really networked and stay together. We meet on a regular basis in the Seattle area, 6-7 times a year. So just like right in here, if you know each other, feel free to collaborate with each other on how you do and how'd you use it. There's good learning from each other. So take advantage of that if you don't have a larger group at your own company that wants to look at. So Kaizen means good change, right? So the whole point is if something is going to change, but it's not going to improve, you've just created waste. So some things that we can debate about, but there's some of the things that to me, it's going to be gravity. I won't really debate it. So we can argue a lot of things, but I think we'll all agree, right? If I drop the pen, it's going to hit the floor. It's going to go down. So waste is bad. That's gravity. So you're never going to convince me that waste is good. If you're ever in a situation where somebody's trying to justify it, you shouldn't take the role of trying to justify why waste is bad. The responsibility is on them to justify why their waste should stay in the process. So waste is bad, that's gravity. I'm really not going to debate you on that one. We don't have enough time for that. So we're going to take a look at it from your perspective. So be selfish here again. I want you to think about yourself because I want you to focus on yourself and comfort of this, right? The best thing you can do in order to help your own team is for you to be really comfortable enough, right? That you can talk about it, you can have conversations, you can walk through so that sounds like a waste of this, right? Let's talk about what this is. How can we get rid of that? Right? When you can have those conversations with your team, when you can start bringing up, hey, so I'm hearing that there's waste in this process and that's causing us a problem. Okay, it's a waste of this. How are we going to get rid of that? Right? It's a nice, easy way of having a conversation and just making it part of how you function. But you being comfortable with that, right, is what's most important for me. So I want you to think of a problem that you want to tackle. If you're really struggling, it's okay. You can chew on it. I recognize some folks need a little bit of time to process, and that's fine. But some of the ones that we tackled, one I talked about, right, letting employees do their own ordering. The problem that she was facing was how much time it was taking. And that wasn't something that she needed to do, right? She wasn't focusing on the day after tomorrow. She was focusing on the tomorrow today, that IT director, right? So she recognized what the waste is. People were waiting for the items, which was leaving tickets open. And so, right, she worked through the problem in order to have the solution be allowing some of her team members to order things. Our executive team, employees, right, and different leaders and teams were waiting for us to make decisions or pass information. We changed the way we schedule meetings. In some cases, we actually got rid of meetings. In other cases, we went through and said, we've been making people come who don't need to. Let's give them time back. And then a third one that we did is we actually scheduled, if it's a meeting and it's regularly a half hour, it's a mail rule you can build in Outlook. It's going to automatically cut it short by 5. So the meeting's going to be 25 minutes. If it's an hour or more, it's going to cut it short 10 minutes. And that time now is intended to be, okay, I'll go send you that follow-up. I'll go pull that thing that you need. I'll go forward that piece that you I'll go send the email to the group of what we need them to do for the action items, right? So getting rid of the waiting in it, the same action still took place. We have a director of ops who is struggling with some items where we're catching load issues before they get to the aircraft, or we're having to catch load issues before they get to the aircraft. And so where she worked through a problem of, we got a lot of empty containers in the Hawaiian Islands that come back to Honolulu empty. How do we make sure we grab the FedEx, UPS, other container that was in the right spot? Sometimes they put it in the wrong spot. So the problem was we're loading a container we thought was empty and we're having to catch that we grabbed the wrong container because UPS, FedEx puts it in the wrong spot. Well, we're not going to go yell at our customers. So what are we going to do about it? Well, it was a waste of transporting, right? And movement because our people and things are moving when they shouldn't. It's a defect because it got all the way to the aircraft and then we open up the curtain and there's some cargo in it. Well, they put it in the wrong lane. So we had to fix it. So she's working through that solution of how do we change the process to get rid of it. So that is hers because she's having to spend a whole lot of time fixing it, right? Because that's a compliance safety. And she's not spending enough time in the day after tomorrow. So I bring this stuff up a lot because that's usually where the coaching sessions go when I'm meeting with somebody individually for quite a while, is how to change so that they can be more strategic in their role, right, as a leader and do what they need to do here so that their teams can do what they need to do here, get the waste out of the process. So think selfish, think about you, think about the things that you do control. I'll ask you the same question that I've asked technicians. What is just something frustrating you? And does that pop a waste out that you're thinking of that you could change differently? What's something that you're creating, waiting on, or is taking too much of your time that you could do differently? There's another way of thinking. What takes too long? That might spawn an idea as well. Don't go any further than the problem yet. Some of you are eager, I know, it's okay. And they're still moving slowly. Okay, who wants to share? I'm just not too embarrassed.
Clear the problem that we want to solve. I think for us at our company, it's confirmed by our employee engagement scores around communication. Obviously, that's gonna look different depending on who you ask. But one thing for me in my role and kind of how it affects other departments is when changes are made, how it's communicated and kind of streamlined a little bit. Like I said, it's, for us, it's over processed, and in that over processing, it leads to duplicated information, incorrectly transcribed information, and kind of leads to more chaos because you get different, I don't know, it's a game of telephone. So
Yeah.
you start the conversation and it funnels through the whole, the whole company. By the time it gets to the end person, it's changed multiple times. So trying to streamline that process, so it's kind of scattershot around.
Okay, so the
Yeah.
problem is failure to communicate it correctly or failure to communicate the accurate message. Correct. Okay. Who else? I won't be the college teacher that calls you out. I'll let you decide. If you were all in the company, then I would call people, but
I wrote down a very tedious, minimal, small scale issue, but it's something that eats up a lot of my time, and that's our credit card and postage machine processes. We are a small company. We do not have an overall corporate credit card program. So we have these like scattered credit cards across the company.
for like, so like there, so for an employee to go make a purchase on the company's, have a company card or.
Correct. The login to the portals is very, it's a very small group of people that has the ability to log in to the cards. And for good reason, because it's, it's a company credit card versus, and like Wells Fargo P cards, each employee gets their own login, manage their own card. And then the company administrators just set the overarching rules. But, I log in, I take my time to look at the card activity every week. I pull the statements, I pull the activity, I download it into a file, send it to our AP clerk, and then she chases receipts. And chasing receipts takes a lot of time. Pulling the data and looking at the cards every week takes a lot of time.
suggestion, seeing that one could grow to an enormous list of problems very quickly. I would go super small to start, tackle one very small aspect of it and take a first problem of, I don't know whether they, right, the employees that are having these have all of these, right? Because you might find, okay, well, all the employees who have the knowledge to do the pieces of it, but maybe nobody's actually conveyed their responsibility up, right? So, hey, let's first tackle make sure all employees understand responsibilities. Okay, once we've done that, now what does the problem see, right? Does suddenly your problem get smaller, or maybe a specific part of it starts to show out? Next time, next improvement. Okay, now I'm gonna go tackle that one small piece. Now does the bigger problem start to get smaller? Okay, now what am I seeing? Well, I'm taking that small piece and just keep going at it. So because it sounds like there's a lot of people involved and there might be some inconsistencies, everybody doing what they're supposed to, I would start with just this and go, okay, have they been given the knowledge to do it? And do they understand their responsibility of how? If we do those, if we convey those, share it, does the problem suddenly get smaller? Do you start to see things happening better? And does that need to be refreshed, right? Some people don't use company cards very often, and for the once a year they do, they're gonna forget next year. So we do in the annual, you've got to do, it's like 5 minutes, just a reminder of here's your expectations as a company card. So if you tackle that, does your problem suddenly get a lot smaller? And does it help you see the next little piece that you can go after to do? Because company cards and all the problems that go with it could be very big to tackle. And we learn better through repetition. So you'll just get more comfortable with going through these faster by doing a whole lot of smaller ones. Who else?
Well, I see in my job, I see a delay, so I ask, what's up? And they say, where's my parts? And so they're not getting their parts, and so I see psychologically they're resigned, they've given up. I don't have a way to track the parts because I'm trying to help get this going because we do have a schedule to keep. And so where's my parts is there's a void out there and, engagement and, of the people out in the field, Bethel or wherever, they're being ignored. That's their feeling. And I don't have a way to find where the parts are. So I can go to the emails, I can go to the movement orders, I can go look on the boxes. But I don't have a good way of tracking what was sent and where without digging a lot. Maybe we could improve our systems on that. And that would have a lot of good effect down the road, but it will help their parts.
So sometimes the problem that you're seeing is not the first place to start. So do you guys have a maintenance system? Aircraft maintenance for
Yeah.
tracking parts of it? Okay.
Kind of for the parts is iffy.
Okay. We've had a similar where the system that we have tracks wasn't being used in some cases for the way it should be. Before we could tackle the use of the system, we actually had to go fix some of the processes first because we didn't have the bandwidth for the people to do the work. So we actually had to go back and look at some of the other processes and go, okay, how can we bring down how much work these are taking? People still need what they need. We still need the information we need, but how do we actually cut the waste out of those others? Because we need stores to be able to do these other items as well, but we didn't have the bandwidth for them to do it. So if you need to be able to do tracking, it might be okay, I need to be able to go look at some of this, or I need time to figure out this problem. You might want to go look at some other things and go, hey, how can I make these take less time for me? Because I want more time. Where I typically will recommend groups is don't go after your biggest problems first, go after the ones that are able to solve fast. Even if it's only 5 minutes a day, you start knocking those out and it takes you a week to do one and a week to do another. And suddenly after a month, you've got a good chunk of time every week that you can set aside to focus on your bigger ones. And that time block just keeps getting bigger. So go after improvements you can solve the fastest first, as opposed to ones that have the biggest benefit. That gives you more time to do more improvement later. So if this is going to be we're going to have to do something to our system to do, as soon as IT starts to need to be involved, the time component goes up on the effort versus, okay, how can I make the other things that I do take less time? Now I got more time to focus on this bigger one I've given myself time to actually do more improved work, is what you get out of it. That's actually the first thing that we asked the IT group after that director had been coaching for a year. We asked them to look at things that take longer for them to resolve. What can they solve the fastest to make IT tickets get resolved faster? And most employees that they're helping aren't going to see the benefit because it's just a couple minutes here and there, but they're knocking out a high volume. And now we're starting to see they've got an hour back, 2 hours back in their week to now go solve those other IT tickets that are open. And really slowly, the time to close is getting faster and faster. Yeah, technology ones are hard. With project teams for larger efforts, we will in some cases actually say new technology solutions are out of scope. Because what we want them to focus on is how do you change the way you do it, not I want this other application, right? We're always one application away from perfection. If I can go have that one tool, then everything's gonna be great.
On top
Well,
of 5 that you already have, right?
that weren't implemented, weren't data connected, you're re-entering your fields. This one might resonate. How many different places are y'all entering flight times? Yeah, okay, yeah, see, we've had the same. So we're now going back and fixing the fact that our aircraft movement system isn't providing that. And we're spending a lot of money and time and people's energy re-entering the same information in 4 different places. Well, we got it down to 2 now. Yeah, technology solutions, right, take time. So we focused on a couple other things we could do to fix it, which gave us time now to go back and address we're entering it manually in 4 different places. What else?
I wrote down one that we're actually currently working on, but with regards to technology, we never had a solution to track our own maintenance tickets for non-aviation based equipment assets. So for instance, we were always kind of reactive with regards to maintaining ground service equipment or facilities and everything else. The information that we receive would come in 3, 4, 5 different methods, whether it be an email, a text message, a call, or Joe talked to Schmo, who talked to Curly, and then Curly finally in passing went, oh, hey, by the way, all these things are broken. And we find out 2 weeks later and it's an impact to our operation and everything else. So, and then to top that off, you also have the ones that are semi-handy enough to implement their own quote unquote fix, which sometimes makes the problem much larger than it
The
could.
Band-Aid solution,
It
right?
would have just been reported.
Yeah.
To begin with. So in our particular case, we've begun to utilize a new CMMS software in order to be able to track that. So that way people can see it, they know they can report these problems in one avenue instead of avoiding the multiplicative communications and everything else on top of that. So I just haven't applied the Kaizen process to it, so I thought it was a good one to work with.
Yeah, and so the good on that one, right? So even though there's a technology aspect, right, that you can do it under total control, right? It doesn't require a lot of outside, and it's one that you could manage internally, right? With a very small group of just you guys in order to have a benefit to another group, right? So it doesn't require a lot of outside of the stakeholders. But you can focus on doing something really quick and then just iterating, okay, we're not capturing this other piece of information. Let's kind of add that as a column. And okay, well, we should probably know this for the next time. Okay, let's capture that. So you can just grow it incrementally, but you can just start quick, get it in place and start to see some benefit right away and just start chipping away at the waiting waste and other items.
You're not alone, by the way. Just so you know.
Yeah.
I didn't figure.
Anybody else? Okay, so here's an ask, and it's a little bit of trust. Where I've seen this taken and used and it falls really quickly is I'm gonna go put these out and I'm gonna let my employees fill them out and send them in or email them in and put them in an inbox. And what are your idea boxes, right? Please don't do that. My ask actually of this, where you will get the most value, is don't actually have anybody use this for months other than yourself. And if you're using it in a conversation with somebody who reports to you, keep it to yourself. And that's not you're not trying to get them to learn, but the best value for you as a leader to make this part of the conversation is just to get comfortable with the thought process. Some of the items are on there for a very key reason, because the intent of this is meant to be used in a conversation, right? So when we have leaders in the company learning how, right, to apply CI, how to think about waste, even if waste is all you ever focus on from a CI perspective for years, you will see a huge benefit just to people recognizing we're over processing, we're moving that stuff every time we need to get to that other stuff. Can we just shift how we're doing it? Hey, we keep things that have dust on them and they've been here since 1982, right? Even if you just focus on the waste and build that into the conversation, you're going to be able to have conversations in a very different way, right? You can start to move down over there, the day at a time, right? So get to that, the day after tomorrow place a lot faster for yourself. Because, right, the benefit in the red words, right, how that helps your team, how that makes them more successful. But don't skip, go through it, right? What is the problem or even opportunity? Maybe you're trying to take advantage of a new piece of business, or you're recognizing there's a new skill that we're needing to have as a company. How do you bring in? How does that change that opportunity, reduce waste, or how we put it in place? But so the stops on, just to share, the intent is when you get to the point where you can have this be used with your directs and have them come back and go, okay, I'm ready to have a conversation. I've thought through this enough. Now let's talk through it. Okay, is this a problem we're solving, right? That's the whole point of that first stop of, yep, I see it, but is that the problem we should be solving, or is there something else, right? Or is that the waste that we should be solving? You might have 4 or 5 wastes.
Can you see this process going from a director level up to like a VP level?
So this is where
Where there are problems.
yeah, so this is where internally we started with the exec team.
Yeah.
Because the exec team needs to set the expectation of how this works in. So they're moving at different levels, right? They're not all in the same place. Our executive over our operational side has moved a whole lot faster. Our IT, our CIO, Chief Information Officer, she's been moving a lot faster. Let you know Gideon Garcia? No, okay. He's really grabbed onto this and is using the waste conversations with his own team, talking through. We've even done some sessions with his leaders to help them kind of talk through how can they think through the problems. But it really starts at that. That being said, there's nothing stopping any leader from having better conversations with their own team, right? Even if you don't have those, right, that are of a higher authority understanding that aspect of it, there's nothing stopping absolutely any leader from having better conversations with their own team and bringing things up. Hey, we're going to work on this, my team. We found that there's some waste here. This is what it's doing to us. We're going to go fix that little thing. And the smaller it is, right, the easier it is to make a case for it to fix, because you can just keep knocking away at them. So don't let that stop. It's going to be some educating up. But you can start modeling it if those that you report to don't understand it by just talking about it. I've been in that position. It can be tough depending on who the leader is.
I guess part of it, I think, is they might be part of the problem. I mean, I'm totally serious.
That,
And so I guess that's
Yeah.
the conversation and I
Yeah.
guess go to them and say, here's a problem, it's not just me, other people.
Yeah.
How can we resolve it? I don't know.
so let me
There's a lot of
ask,
ways to
yeah. So let me ask some questions, because I don't want to give a solution not knowing the full context, right? So I can better help asking. Is the person bringing problems and not being clear, wants you to work, or you're seeing a problem they don't?
I think the work at my level hinges on what they do or don't do.
Okay,
And if they don't do it, then everyone below is stopped.
Okay.
Or waiting.
that might need, right, some foundational relationship pieces, so then you can do the, hey, we're not able to meet this. We keep getting it on Tuesday. We really need it on Friday in order to, can I go work with this group to make that change? Or, hey, can we get this to you so you can send it earlier? That would actually help us do. So help them recognize the goodness and where they do without it being accusational. I mean, nobody responds to you're screwing us up, right? I mean, let's just face it. But, right, if people feel like, hey, somebody's coming in a very heartfelt way of, hey, I need your help. This is not helping. It's actually making it really hard. Can we make this change? Because that would be really helpful if you do it this way for us. And I mean, I think we all appreciate the honest, right, but caring feedback. I mean, let's be honest, right? I think some of us have worked with folks where somebody didn't care enough to give them feedback and they could have been more successful in their career, right? So to me, it's a sign of you cared enough to have a conversation with them, right? You respected them enough to have a conversation.
Yeah.
And doing nothing just keeps the problem. So,
Yeah, maintaining the status quo.
but it still comes back to the, right, just with a lot more love and caring. There's a problem. Do we both recognize there's a problem here? Because then we can have a really good conversation from then on.
That's some nice things that like, as a form or as a process, the whole concept of guides that is pretty nice because you can implement it both personally, occupationally, whatever. You can utilize it within your team, fix problems, other people start to notice that your division or department starts to change and they go, oh, wow, what have you been doing? Why is your department so well oiled now? Why is it functioning so much better than what I perceived it as before? And then that gives you the opportunity to reinforce, it's like, well, this is what we've been doing. This is what I learned. And this has allowed us to operate more efficiently. I mean, especially like talking about executive leadership, right? If they don't, and going back to earlier with regards to with your other team members, your management, what have you, is if they don't see the problem, or if they choose not to identify the problem, somehow you have to give them multiple avenues in order to better understand what's going on and to value what you're trying to bring to them.
Yeah.
Right. So,
We have one operational leader. He's really been working on this with his leadership team. And over the course of last year, the focus that they put on building this into the daily conversations of how they see and what do they do right and what's the problem and making those problems very incrementally small. He went from the start of the year to the end of the year. He brought his recordable injuries down half, his lost time injuries down by 80%. His on-time performance was it was the mid 40s and he ended the year in the high 80s. So he's just been chipping away at these things that had a big impact on the business, right? And had a big impact on the employee group. And his team as a whole is benefiting by him just focusing on, right, how he leads that day that's right the day after tomorrow. And with his leadership team, how do we just make those problems, solve the small pieces of it? You're not going to solve the whole at sometimes. Please be okay with that. You might have all 7 wastes filled out and you might have multiple of in some cases. Just grab one. Really, just grab one of them and go after the waiting. Nobody likes the waiting. It probably has more impact than you can even see. But so here's my ask, and here's the trust giving. So, and to kind of convey where I'm at on internally, I don't actually give this to leaders until they've spent some time building up their comfort and we've had some conversations over a while. And it's not a lack of trust. What we want to make sure, right, is it's not okay, I'm going to use this, I'm going to start doing it, but not able to have the conversations the right way. So my ask is get really comfortable with yourself. You can find a lot of YouTube videos just talking about waste and how to think through as a leader of this, but focus on just using it yourself. If you want to have it in front of you, having conversations with your team, fantastic for your direct reports. But if there's things that you can do directly just on yourself, the processes that you have for yourself first, and do a few of those, it's amazing the comfort level you'll get on then having the conversations with, right? The examples I gave of, we just changed how we did our own meetings. The IT director changed how she did a whole list of items that were just her processes. She did them, she owned them, she was responsible, but they had a lot of waste in them that she needed to fix so she could do more for her team and be in that day after tomorrow. So think of yourself, please use it for yourself. But as you get comfortable talking about the waste and you're getting comfortable, right, even just asking yourself those questions, start to bring it in the conversations with your own. if you're in the, where I typically get asked when we get towards the end of these sessions is, okay, but where do I start? Just start. If you end up grabbing a problem that's too big and you realize I bit off way more than I can chew with it, take a stop, step back, take a really small piece of it and just go do that one small piece. And if all you get is 30 minutes in a week, awesome. If all you get is a little piece of it and it's a little smaller, great. Go take another piece of it and do it again. But start. Repetition is your friend. Repeatedly doing it over and over is your friend. That's how you'll learn the most.
Small changes lead to big changes.
Yeah. My title's continuous improvement, not postponed perfection. And I guarantee you, my peers all know if they come and bring something that's a 2-3 year effort, my next question is, how can we break that down to 6-month chunks? Small pieces, get it done, go on, successes. A lot of your companies are like ours, right? Huge, long efforts of a couple months or more. That's challenge, right? Building out a good plan to execute and get done in a time frame you expected, that's hard, right? So go for smaller, get the piece, take the win, thank your team, keep going. What else? We got a few minutes, unless you want to get rid of. So a couple of things. So I'm going to send you a follow-up. I'll send you the Word version of this so you can have it if you want to, if you like to type it versus write it. What I usually suggest from folks is close your computer, take this, go sit somewhere and write out on it. Take a couple versions if you want. For the task switching reason, it's really easy to get distracted. So go find somewhere you can sit and think through the problem and rewrite it. Take a pencil if you want. If you're more comfortable typing it, you'll have the Word version. I'll send you some of the items around waste and a few others, just so you have them to reference. If there's something you want to look at later, feel free to take a picture. I'll leave them up for a few minutes. If you have a burning question of, hey, do you know somewhere I could go? Or is there a book you recommend? Or hey, is there somebody that we could reach out or replace? My email's up on the whiteboard. Feel free to send. While I can't come do whole sessions for companies or do coaching outside, I'm happy to answer a question for you if you want to reach out. I learned through talking with all of you as well. So that's a benefit. I'm happy to answer a question for you.
And the email address is with an SS before.
At the end,
Yeah,
yes.
just seemed out of place. So that's great.
Saltchuk Aviation Shared Services. So we have multiple operating companies in just Saltchuk Aviation.
Yeah.
And then Saltchuk as a whole has, I think, I've lost track, 44 companies. So yeah. All right. Thank you. Thank you for engaging. Please, if you got a question, feel free to send it. But thanks for the time. Thanks for coming today. Happy Friday.
Thank you.
Welcome.